Welcome back, Flyers Nitty Gritty fans, to Getting Gritty with It with your host, Yariv, Wolok, my partner in crime, as always, Vasili, Gianarakos. Vasili, how are you, my friend?
Doing really well, Yariv. Excited for the episode tonight. Full of prospect talk and other great hockey talk, so it's going to be a good one. We have a great guest. How you doing, my friend?
Doing well. And yeah, you referenced it. We do have a great guest. Happy to welcome back to the show our friend from the Draft Analyst. He is the Draft Analyst, Steve Kournianos. Steve, welcome back to the show, man.
What's going on, guys?
Good, man. It's really good to have you. We're excited to get into it. Before we do, just want to remind everybody, please hit like, subscribe. If you can help share it out, also a humongous help. Follow us on iTunes, Spotify, give us a rating on iTunes, and also a shout out to our sponsor, Jim Steaks. Again, they're still not open yet, at least in their main location at 4th and South, but you can get their cheesesteaks on DoorDash. All right, let's just get right into it. We'll start off with a little bit of Flyers talk, and then we'll just go all rest prospect stuff. So, we were talking a little bit about this prior to going live, but first the first question, Steve, as an outsider, right? Because Vasili and I, everybody already knows what we think, but have the Flyers surprised you? Right now, they're, technically they're in a playoff spot. They're near the upper half of the division. They're definitely in the upper half of the NHL. And, if they continue this, they could potentially be a playoff team. At the very least, what we've been saying all offseason is that they would be a bubble team. And it looks like they're slightly exceeding those expectations, but they're right around there. Have they surprised you at all as somebody who's not from Philly?
Yeah, they have surprised me, because not necessarily like the effort and not like hovering around the 500 mark, at least one loss wise, because you knew that when Torts came that he was going to make sure that it was going to be like more effort. And when you play hard for 60 minutes, you're going to steal some games. And as long as you get some goaltending, which the Flyers have been getting, it's going to keep them in the hunt. They had a similar start last year, and I forgot when it kind of turned, but they still were competitive, which was not the case the previous couple of seasons, where they just kind of mailed it in a little bit and the efforts were questioned. Whereas now, like the last year and season plus on the Torts, and now with a new front office, they haven't given up. They're like they compete hard. There's obviously some issues with skill or execution based on the personnel and the inexperience. But as far as a Flyers team showing up and righting the wrongs from previous additions, they've made massive. The penalty kill is phenomenal. And so does that tie into Couturier and Lawton being healthy? Finally, like you have balance in
Atkinson.
So you have, when I was watching their games this year, like I'm like, okay, whoa, they could roll four lines. Like they have a really good fourth line. So after watching them a couple of times in the beginning of the season, I'm like, all right, so this is the same thing that we saw last year, but how long will they be able to sustain it? Because remember, they didn't make major moves in the offseason. They were like, they had these press conferences like, we're rebuilding, we got to retool, we have to, change the culture and yada, yada, yada. And, so I'm more surprised at the teams who aren't doing well than what the Flyers are doing. Like I expected New Jersey to be an elite team. Carolina's been up and down. So the conditions are ripe for the Flyers if they could keep this going. If they're getting great goaltending from the Urson Hart duo, that like if they're in the hunt in early to mid-February, you start talking playoffs and maybe even buying at the deadline, which is nuts to think about.
Don't even scare our fans.
Well, listen, but you definitely have to tip your hat, no matter whether you want the rebuild to continue or not. You got to give the guys, the coach, the staff, the team credit, because they're not wilting. They're not, just saying, "Hey, come on into our building and embarrass us," which unfortunately was the case for them on the previous regimes. So to answer your question, a little surprised, but again, more so. The parity is more surprising in the Eastern Conference and also in the Metro Division than, let's say, the Flyers' effort or their performance on the ice.
Yeah. Do you have anything to add, Vasili? Did you want to follow up anything?
No, not much. Just that, I mean, if you look at where the Flyers were last season to this season, you can clearly see there's a progression in their game. And I
Yeah.
think we've talked about it on prior episodes already, so listeners are already kind of aware of our perspective of it. But if you look at it, it's just the difference in style, right? They're playing a lot more aggressively. That's through the neutral zone. That's just through looking to create offense at different turns and in different ways. Like last season, they weren't a team that was pinching as often in the offensive zone. This year, kind of the defensemen have the green light to do that, and I think that's been a really key part in why they've been able to kind of sustain this play. Just the aggressive style of play that they're kind of looking for this season versus the last. And I think with some of the younger guys that played well last season, like a Tippett, and then you have a Forster and a Brink coming into it, it makes sense to go with that aggressive style, especially when you have defense first forwards like a Couturier, like an Atkinson coming back from an injury, essentially.
Yeah, and that's a big thing of what you were saying, Steve, is when the Flyers started off hot last year and they started off in a good position, they essentially crumbled because they just couldn't stay healthy. I mean, there were at one point it was 70% of the lineup was AHL players, and that's really when they went on that losing streak. So, you did mention the health of Couturier and Atkinson, but I think it's even, Tippett went down at one point, TK went down at one point. It just, we had a significant amount of injuries and already weren't deep enough to sustain any of those injuries to begin with, and then compile that with youth. So let me ask you this then. This has also kind of been a big topic, and we talked a little bit about it before we started recording, but, there is I would even say large segment, at least of the Twitter fan base. I wouldn't say the average Philadelphia sports fan even notices this type of stuff. They just notice win or losing. But there is a large contingent of the fan base that is upset that the Flyers are in a playoff position. It's almost funny to say. Now, Vasili and I, we're on the same page with it. What we kind of been telling people is like, look, this is also part of the rebuilding process. It's not just the players on the ice. It's also the way you play, the system, the composure, just really changing their mentality. And you referenced this before we recorded too, right? The attitude of refusing to be embarrassed at home and just the aggression in which they play. And then making the playoffs themselves, the value that has to a team that is rebuilding is immense. And we saw how that affected the New York Rangers, who are now, are maybe the best team in the league at this point, by the way they're playing. So what do you think about that? And does it hurt them to be a playoff team?
No, not even the slightest sense, because you want your young guys to experience competitive games. You don't want them playing in 4-1 blowouts on the wrong side of a 4-1 or 6-2 blowout. You want them playing in games, and listen, these kids, and I used to call them kids because a lot of them are in their early to mid 20s. They're competitive and they're hungry, and there's no way Tortorella is going to allow them to rest on their laurels, right, and to say, make shortcuts and and on top of it, they also get bonuses. They have contracts. They have bonuses in their contracts. You get more money. There's the playoff share. So there's a lot of reasons why a team would want to prove the doubters wrong. Now, as far as from a strategic standpoint, if the Flyers were, let's say, had a farm system, let's say Colorado's or Edmonton's, where there's really not a whole lot, and you're really saying we have 3 good prospects. No, it's not the case. The Flyers have, I would say right now, at least 5 or 6 blue chip, not just good, blue chip, we could build around these guys, and have them goalies. So it's that part of the process is being executed perfectly. The other piece to it, though, is that, if the Flyers went out this offseason and said, we're going to go out, we're going to sign all these, like Detroit did, we're going to go out, we're going to end the rebuild because we're going to bring in veterans and UFA. They didn't do that. They went and they said, we're not doing really anything. We're going to play some AHL guys are coming back healthy. We got to keep spots open for them. So it isn't like this was a strategy, let's say, that Jones and Briere and the staff got together and said, we have to make their rhetoric was basically saying, we're rebuilding and we're ready to kind of deal with whatever the results are. But, I understand that if you're a Flyers fan and you feel that, well, Gauthier is probably better at wing maybe, and Michkov is this dynamic wing. We really need a legit number 1 center. And, oh, look at this. Max, Celebrini is having an Adam Fantilli kind of a Jack Eichel kind of a season in college. And that would be great if you have this, Jonathan Taves, a Mark Scheifele, Mika Zibanejad kind of hybrid where he's like, an 80-point player. Yeah, perfect. And I can understand if the fans are upset that they're losing out. They might lose out on that opportunity because the team is doing so well. Because I think before the season started, it would be easy for teams, Tortorella's, demands notwithstanding, it would be easy to point to, let's say, the Flyers and the Sharks and but not even the Blue Jackets, because they went out and they got Provorov and Severson and, they have the Gaudreau. So you look at the Flyers and all the moves that they made, it's like these are not moves made by a team that wants to make the playoffs. These are moves made by a team that just wants to maintain competitiveness. So I will say this, last thing I'll say is that still a lot of season left, okay? If they hit a slump like they did last year and they have an opportunity to sell off at the deadline, then everybody should be happy. Like, hey, we gave it a shot. The kids played, they produced, and now we're selling off guys at the deadline to get more assets. But as of right now, the goal should be to make the playoffs. Absolutely. You can't give up on a season because you want a high draft pick. The Flyers have had plenty of those. So there's a lot of reasons why I could go on. Like, Forster's playing great. He was a first-round pick only a couple of years ago. Brink, Tippett, and who's the other guy in the line? Brink, Tippett, and Frost. They've looked great, the last couple of games. So I don't know. It just seems like weird. It's like a weird, peeve, I guess, to be upset that the team is doing well. But I see it, but I don't agree with it.
Yeah, and the way we kind of see it too, and Vasili, I'll let you chime in a second here, is, again, if you don't make the playoffs, you sell off assets. We got plenty of guys on expiring contracts that we could move. Yeah. And even if you don't move them, it doesn't mean you're getting a top pick in the draft. And a lot of picks, while don't get me wrong, it opens up your opportunity to get some steals in the draft, guys who maybe are going to be a lot better than their draft position. And we'll talk about some of those guys in the Flyers system here. But there's no guarantee that any of those picks even become that option that's going to elevate you to be, one of the best teams in the league. Like, Celebrini is one guy, but you have to be the worst team in the league or a bottom 3 team in the league to get him. So it's
but here's the thing. I will say this. I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, please.
I will say this. Like, when you look at the teams that you're going to be competing with in a division, specifically, I'm looking at New Jersey. The Rangers have more age on their side, but let's just say if New Jersey struggles notwithstanding, like they have a bunch of elite no shit, like franchise cornerstone pieces at the defense position and at the forward position. So I would understand if, let's say, if Flyers fans are like, you know what, just one more draft, getting a top 5 talent, specifically maybe a franchise defenseman, which, with all due respect to the likes of Andrea and Zamula and Cam York and them, they don't have anybody that compares to Luke Hughes or Simon Nemeth. Adam Fox is still young. So you'd like to see the Flyers maybe add to that, and they could do that with this draft. So we'll talk about that later on in the podcast. But, for the most part, though, they'll have those opportunities, like you said. And the joy, the elation of making the playoffs as a sports fan, there's really not a whole lot that beats it. Yeah, you guys win an award at the end of the season. Obviously winning a championship, going to a conference final, winning a division, that's all fine. But making the playoffs when you haven't, to me, should be the strategic, or at least the operational goal. The long-term strategy being to make the Flyers into a perennial dominant team, like a Vegas or a Colorado or whatever. So,
Vasili, anything to add?
I just think for the Flyers and looking at where they're at right now, you see their roster. If it was veteran laden and there was a ton of veterans on the team, maybe you could say, okay, they're never going to have this, high end talent eventually to compete with the other contenders in the league. But if you look at their prospect pool, they do have some of that with a Michkov and Gauthier potentially coming in here. But it's also just look at the young guys on their roster, right? They have a lot of young guys like a Tippett, like a Cates, like a Frost, like a Farabee, like a Brink, like a York, Zamula, Andre, you name it, even Urson in the backup role there. So them, being in a bunch of games where they're not competitive, they're actively losing, that can't be a good thing for their development. So I think just the fact that they're a lot more competitive this season, but if they can do it for a longer period of time as well this season, like as compared to the last, it'll be a good thing because these guys can continue to play in these competitive games. And that's how you kind of learn the habits and bring those habits into your game that you need to actually win and win when it matters, right? If you're never in a game that's competitive, how are you going to learn as a young team how to win when it really matters? Right. So I think that's an important part of the development process as well, that some people might overlook when you see, okay, well, they're not going to get that, potential top 5 pick, but still you can be in competitive games and still get a pick between the 14 and the 8 or 9 range and still get a good player there as well. So I think there's two sides of the coin to kind of look at here.
Yeah, and you hear the players, if you watch the playoffs, and we all do, and they interview players in between periods, like especially rentals or guys that like hired guns or even young guys, they'll always say, it's like, well, I've been to the first round before, and like they'll talk about the experience of being in a playoff push and how it helped them, and it makes them hungrier. Yeah. And so I think that the Flyers are hungry on the ice right now. Puck pursuit, everything, you name it. But it's a different animal. Like when you're like, wait, we can make the play. What were the Vegas odds? Oh, forget that. We're going to prove everybody wrong. And in a way, like, so I know like sometimes you could take a step, like look at New Jersey, perfect example. We said, oh, they're going to be great forever now. And they took they're taking a little bit of a step back, and they're dealing with all types of issues. But none of those players, even though they got you lost badly in round 2, none of those players regret making the playoffs. You know what I mean? And that was a pretty long rebuild to begin with. So my advice to fans in Philadelphia who are wishing for the rebuild to involve more losing is that, okay, so when the playoffs start, you're going to boycott the team? When the Flyers are playing, you're going to say, "Oh, no." You're going to be just like everybody else. You're going to be at the arena, or you're going to be at home. You're going to have playoff viewing parties. You're going to be at bars. It's going to be a great experience. So why piss away a chance to do that just for the sake of another top 5 pick? And listen, if they miss the playoffs and they're a 14th or 13th seed, this is a pretty good draft for defensemen. They're going to get an elite franchise caliber defenseman. So it's not like, if it's just Celebrini, all right, everyone's going to complain.
Yeah.
But
and that's something they need too, right? They do need that type of defenseman. So
I would
it would work out essentially.
Yeah, I think it will.
Even more than a center at this point. We'll end with this episode on what recommendations on some players, and then we'll have you back on for a more robust talk about the draft.
Sure.
So let's talk about some Flyers rookies. I'm sure you had a chance to watch some of them this year. You mentioned a few already. But let's talk about Tyson Forrester. He's struggled offensively. He's played well in all situations, was really struggling to put the puck in the net, to produce points for a while, but Torts never gave up on him. We just talked about it on the last episode. He saw it in him that he has that capability. And now Tyson Forrester, he has 4 goals and 2 assists in the last 4 games. He's been red hot. He's definitely been a top player for the Flyers over the past few games. He's noticeable in every shift, in every type of situation. I wouldn't be surprised if he even gets some PK time here moving forward. What do you think about Tyson Forrester? Has he exceeded your expectations? What have you seen from him? Maybe to let some people know how you view him in general for the rest of his career.
Well, in his draft year, Barry, he was basically like an MVP caliber kind of player. So I didn't have him ranked all that high, but I did see that. All right, a sniping wing. That's like his most likely landing spot would be as a top 6 sniping wing. You use him as a one-time option on the power play, and maybe you get like 25, 30 goals out of him. But the thing is, what I love about Forster is that he's been criticized, and I never really beat him up about his skating. I had to mention, like, hey, he's an average skater, and he probably has to work on some mechanics. But he put in a ton of work to improve that aspect of his game. And if you look at his progression, like everywhere he's gone since he got drafted, he's been one of the best players on the team. And the Flyers are now on this win streak, and he's playing top. If you want to, is it the top line with Couturier and with Konechny? I mean, he's an integral part of that line. I would probably say that Couturier and Konechny do a lot of the work, and obviously, but it's not like he's a passenger who's banking off of their success. He's doing, and I think the last couple of games he's scored with that wrist shot.
Yeah.
Well, it's a similar situation with Alexis Lafreniere, where it's like, all he does is score goals in front of the net and deflections, but it's like, no, like the kicker score other ways. He's probably being unselfish, or he's being told, hey, go to the net. So you got him on PP1, you got him on the top line. He's scoring now from distance. I mean, he's beating NHL caliber goalies with that shot, and we saw him do that in the AHL. So I think, there might be like ebbs and flows, ups and downs, peaks and valleys, whatever you want to call it, because he's young. But I love his enthusiasm too. I like the fact that he comes to play. He's willing to sacrifice his body. He'll get in front of shots. He uses his long reach. So you're not getting just like a winger who's waiting for the puck and he's shooting it. And most fans would be happy if he did that, as long as he was scoring. But if you play for John Tortorella, he's not going to accept that. You got to play well off the puck. So I think, he's a reason, or one of the reasons why they're doing well this season. Not, he's not obviously not carrying the team, but clearly he's arrived. So it's a matter of just like letting him play, and like you said, Tort's stuck with him, and he's thus far, the last couple of weeks, he's rewarding them.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. He's been developing well this season so far. I mean, obviously the scoring struggles to begin, and I think fans see that, and they see those struggles, and they saw that he came in last season midway through the year and he had 7 points in his first 8 NHL games. So they expect, okay, well, he gets that scoring right off the hop there, so he's going to kind of continue as a rookie to start, and that's not always the case, right? You have to kind of get into a groove, get into a rhythm yourself offensively, but also he's still a rookie, and he's playing against opposing top line defenders in that situation, so you have to factor that into. There's things that he needs to figure out at the NHL level in terms of, okay, what can he do that was successful for him at the AHL, what can he do and bring that to the NHL. I think for Forster, you definitely just see a confidence growing. His defensive game and stuff was there. To your point, Steve, right? He hasn't been a passenger even without the scoring. Like I think I noticed primarily just a lot of his board battles and his ability to win pucks on the boards so far this season. But I think you can definitely see the confidence growing with some goals. And I think the easy factor and the easy thing to point to with that is just the volume of shots. Like over the past handful of games, now that he's potted a few goals here, you see the shooting increasing a lot, and he's being willing to take the puck into the slot and shoot it, or hang on to it for that extra second. That kind of shows a little bit of confidence, and I think you could see a young player playing with a guy like Couturier and Konechny having more confidence now offensively with those two, and obviously they're doing a great job creating chances for him. So I think for Forster and where he's at right now, obviously a little slow start, but he's been coming along nicely, at least the last few games for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So what about Bobby Brink? He came onto the scene. He was red hot in the very beginning, had a really strong preseason, outperformed Forster in some ways, at least offensively, in preseason as well. And, again, he's a smaller guy. He's a little bit older than Forster, and he is coming back from a big injury, so it was a little bit surprising to even see they made the team out of camp. But what do you think about Bobby Brink, and what's his ceiling really from your perspective, from where he was drafted, what he did in college? Because I'm still not certain of his ceiling because his skill set's really high. But I want to say he has potential to be a top line guy, but I don't really know about that 100% at this point. But he definitely seems like he's a top 6 forward type of caliber, at least complimentary scorer type of player with a lot of grit. Like maybe, like 80% of what TK is, something like that. But could it be better than that?
Yeah, I mean, the knock on him was always that he was like more of like a finesse perimeter, smaller guy, but went during his draft year. And you've seen the progression. It's been phenomenal because now he's more aggressive. He's more physical, and not physical in like a power forward kind of way. He's a smaller guy. He's never going to be a masher, but he is not afraid to take a hit. He's not afraid to mix it up in the corners, go in front of the net, like, a hound for pucks. But for me, the thing is his vision, his passing. Well, I think if he becomes successful in the NHL and he does hit, let's say, like for argument's sake, a 50 or 60 point level, it'll be from his passing and his playmaking. I mean, he delivers dimes. And it's not just that; it's like he could do it at a fast pace. Like he could do it on the move. He doesn't move in a straight line, so like he kind of zigzags around. And watching the last couple of games against Pittsburgh, there's chemistry there with Frost and Tippett. They had a bunch of chances the other night, and so I think, again, this is his first, like, I guess, chance to be a full-time player, and it doesn't look like he wants to go back to Lehigh Valley. Like, he I don't want to say he has nothing left to prove. But if Tortorella's now Tortorella, listen, he'll always move guys in and out of the lineup every now and again. He's going to, I think, did he just bench Farabee and Morgan Frost when they beginning of the season?
Yeah.
So there's going to be ups and downs. I still consider these kids young. I know a lot of people are like, well, they're 23 now. That's not, like, no, like, experience is what makes you a veteran, not your age. So I think with Brink, it's going to be a matter of, like, is he going to get those ozone starts? Is he going to get power play time? Can he be an effective player when he's not scoring? And he's really improved that aspect of his game. Like, he's not a liability out there, even in the defensive end. So, you got to like what you're seeing from him.
Yeah, I think that's what surprised me most with Brink, at least this season so far, is even though for being a smaller guy, as you were saying, Steve, I mean, he's not afraid to go into the corners, into puck battles, and he actually really drives the net a lot with just the way he's trying to create offense. So he's always looking to kind of make in-tight passes towards the net, like cross-ice passes for backdoor goals, things like that. Him now and Frost and Tippett are having some success. Previously in the season, him and Farabee were kind of playing well with chemistry together too. So he's obviously meshing well with his teammates. I just think for Brink in general, it'll be the hockey IQ, like you said. Like, you could see on the ice that he's a really smart player. He just seems to find those kind of open areas, soft areas of the ice, as you would call it, to get into those scoring opportunities. So I think Brink, I mean, in terms of potential, at least from my perspective, I would say, second line type of player might be a ceiling, like a 60 points, 65 points, if everything goes particularly right. But yeah, I think it would be more passing based versus like goal scoring for Brink, definitely.
And here's another important thing to mention is, if you would ask any Flyers fan, like, what's their strongest position prospect wise, it's going to be between wing and goaltending.
Yeah.
And, so the competitiveness on the wing, you're going to see it in dev camp. You're going to see it in training camp. You're going to see it in the AHL. And now we're seeing it at the NHL level. Like, these kids do not want to go back to the AHL. Once they're up and you live that lifestyle and you make that money, and you don't want to let go of that. It's a big difference. With all due respect to Lehigh Valley, it's not Philadelphia. And it's the same thing when they go from junior, let's say, to college, or from the USHL to college. Not that they could go back, but I think the point is like, once you get to the higher level, you don't want to go back down. And there's a lot of guys, we'll talk about them, I'm sure, later on. Like, there's going to be some intense competition. So I think you're seeing that intensity. I don't want to call it desperation, but there's got to be a little bit of it with guys like Forster and Brink, because they know, like, they look and they see what Tuomal is doing. They see what Michkov is doing in Russia. Just two examples. So that's going to be good. And we've talked about it plenty of times on the podcast, how competition basically breeds success when it comes to younger players. Like, it's the cream of the crop. That's what you want in your lineup.
I love that. And definitely true. And I think we feel that already. And it's even a nice thing about this year. Like, we have some guys, and we'll talk about them even in the AHL, that in past years, if we didn't have this type of depth, and like you said, we even have a strong fourth line, and Noah Cates is out, and that's also a big loss for us. But, we have a strong fourth line, but there are guys in the AHL. Uli Lichel was just called up, but he's got 12 goals in 18 games, and he's not even old. He's only 24, but there's other guys, Tuomal and whatnot, Denoyer, right? Wade Allison is down there, Lazinski, right? We have other guys who probably would have been on this team in the past and are now relegated to the AHL.
Yeah, they're, in my opinion, a lot of those guys you mentioned, they're NHL players on maybe some on a bad team. Like, you look at like a San Jose or whatever, like they might earn a spot. Like, they've done so well down on the farm. They've played well in camps that you can make the case or the argument that they are NHL ready and the NHL caliber. It's just a matter of room, and that's part of the competition.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, another rookie, and we'll go to goaltending here, and then we'll finish on Zamula. But Samuel Ersson, it is technically his rookie year. He got a kind of a nice sample size last year, so I think a lot of people kind of forget he's a rookie. He had a shaky start just because he really didn't play at all, which I was against. Steve, I really wanted him to start with the Phantoms, and then as soon as they were ready for a backup, to call him up because they're right here. Why even hesitate? I didn't want to see him sitting on the bench. I would prefer just Sandstrom doing it. But Ersson's here. Took him a little bit, but he's played exceptional. He had a really strong game the other night. I don't think his numbers reflect how well he's played. And I see a pretty high ceiling for this guy. Definitely an NHL starter in the making. What do you think about Ersson?
Well, we've talked about him a lot. We like we like him. And for a backup, his advanced numbers are among the best in the league. So, like I said, he had a couple of rough starts in the beginning, but since then he's been fine. Exactly what you want from your backup. And didn't he shut somebody? Did he shut somebody out recently?
The Islanders, yeah.
I remember teasing my cousin about it. Yeah, because he's now the fan. He shot the Islanders, so he's like 6-3, or he's got the numbers are fine. Like he's a backup.
Yeah, like 5-3-1, so he's doing well.
Yeah, and that's with the couple of rough starts that he had.
Right.
So he's cheap. He's proven in the AHL. You can't say he didn't earn this. I think the issues that they have. I think Lehigh Valley is going through the carousel right now where they got numbnuts from the Kings that they got. What was his name?
Peterson.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I called him numbnut. You got him. You got Sandstrom, right?
Sandstrom, yeah.
You got Sandstrom.
Gahagan is the third string there.
Yeah, so and you soon gonna have guys coming in from Europe that are gonna and then Bjarnason as well. But I think that what more could you ask for? You backup goalie's job is basically to give the starter a rest, and every now and again, maybe half the time, win the games you start, and he's done that. He's won more than half the games he started. So, advanced numbers look good. He's played really well recently. So, it's also a nice option for Tortorella because he knows now, like, I got to put this guy in. He's been a sieve. That's not the case with either Hart or Ersson, and we haven't been able to say that. With both Flyers goalies at the NHL level, starter and backup, are playing with consistency. And I mean, just look at Hart last night. I mean, he stole that game.
Yeah.
Dare I say the Flyers have a good goaltending situation right now? I mean, it sounds like they do.
Well, it's funny you were saying that because Vasili and I were saying this is probably the best goaltending situation that we've seen in the past 20 years.
Whoa,
yeah, for the Flyers. And just so you know, Carter Hart was given the third star last night for some reason
over Nedeljkovic.
Nedeljkovic got first star.
The breakaways, the 9,000 breakaways that he
faced, the two short-handed ones.
But he was the losing goalie.
2-on-1 penalty kill. But
he was the losing goalie. It's still a little weird to not give the winning goalie the first
at
star.
Home.
Yeah, who also played exceptional. I didn't get that.
They just didn't want to hurt Nedeljkovic's feelings there.
They
had to mix him in for the first star. But I think for Ersson, like, you have to look at it this way, right? He's a younger goalie. This is his first time ever being a backup, really, in this position. Like, he's been a starter in the SHL on a bad team before coming over to the AHL. He was a starter in Lehigh Valley last season. So it's a new kind of position for him in the sense that he's not playing on an every night basis. So that can be tough for a goalie to kind of adjust themselves to. Another thing too, right? His first game of the season was on October 21st against the Dallas Stars. Before that start, actually on the 21st, he didn't play until a preseason game on September 14th against the Boston Bruins. That's almost over a month and a week where he wasn't in any action. So, like, you can practice as a goalie all you like, but being in a game situation, especially against NHL players, is what's going to get you sharp and ready. So it's not surprising to me that he starts off like letting 5 goals in against Dallas in his first start, 7 goals against Anaheim in the second start there. And then from November 1st to now, there hasn't been a game where he's letting more than 3 goals. So he's been playing really well, since the start of November. Really good stats. It's really the first 2 starts that kind of take away from that. But I think for the Flyers, if you look at like past goaltending situations, it's probably one of the best backup situations that they've had in a few years now with Urson. Because you look at it in the past, right, for Hart, it was essentially like Brian Elliott. I would say Urson probably has a higher ceiling than that, obviously, and just more athleticism to his game than older Elliott did at the tail end of his career. So I think for the Flyers, just goaltending wise, how can you really complain just based on looking at, okay, you have a Hart, Urson, 2 young goalies that can give you some quality starts versus what they've had over the past decade, where it's kind of been the opposite of that, really.
Yeah, a rushed goalie in Hart where he's coming in at 21, and then a 36-year-old veteran. So. Going to the last rookie here. That's with the Flyers. Igor Zamula came in pretty strong start. He's had some really good games. Now that the defense is fully healthy, he's kind of being rotated with Stahl. He was at his peak a +11, I think. I don't know if he's gone down. I haven't looked in a little bit. But he was having a pretty strong kind of a rookie season. He's had stuff kind of piecemeal, but he's never played a full season or even really half a season with the Flyers. But what do you think about Zamula, and where do you kind of see his ceiling as an NHL player?
Well, listen, he's a smooth guy, but consistency is when you have these young guys, especially on defense, you're going to have some moments. And I think, did I read that Tortorella kind of called him out a little bit, said that, so they've been, when I look at the Flyers defense, you got, Sanheim is, leading the league, and he had like a 4-minute shift yesterday.
Yeah, that was nuts.
Yeah, so he's leading the league in ice time. So that York Sanheim pairing is I guess for all intents and purposes your number 1 pairing, and then you have I actually like the Sealer and
Walker
pairing.
They've been great.
You got the puck rusher and you got the physical aspect. And so that bottom pairing has just been a rotating audition, right? Didn't Mete make his debut?
Mete, Belpedio.
Stahl. And Stahl's going to get, I don't want to say favoritism from Torts because he was his number 1 with the Rangers.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, number 2 with the Rangers. Yeah, and he's like a warrior, and the
and Risto was hurt for the whole beginning of the year.
Yeah, so. But they played Belpedio, they played Andrea, right? Yeah. So I think that Zamula he definitely earned it. He's had good camps. He's had he was, I guess we could argue whether he or York was like the better defenseman for Lehigh Valley. They're different types of players. But I think it's just a situation where he's like a younger, I guess, version of Mark Stahl, right? Where he's got length. He's pretty good with the puck, handling it. He could avoid pressure, delays. IQ, I think, is pretty good. It's just a matter of positioning. Is he losing guys in the slot? Is he, winning his battles in the corner, releasing at the right time when he's losing them? Little things like that. I haven't seen him play all that much. But I think ceiling-wise, I don't know if he'll ever be a top 4 guy. But as of right now, like considering all the auditions that they're having, it wouldn't hurt. He's a lefty who could play the right side and the left side. So maybe that type of and the Flyers have been playing on the Torts. They've been playing lefty. I think on that bottom pairing.
Yep.
So I don't know. I've always been ranking him as one of my top 5 or top Flyers prospects because I really like the way he played in the AHL. But I don't know. I think if the playoffs do become more realistic, you're probably not going to see him as often as maybe one of the more experienced guys like Stahl or I don't know anybody else.
Ristolainen or something.
Now that Risto is
back.
I
forgot about Ristolainen. But he's been out most of the season. So
yeah, and he's been playing well since he got back.
Yeah, I think for Zamula and his ceiling, like it's a good question, obviously, because you're looking to develop these young guys and people, he's been around Zamula for such a while now, even though he never got drafted. He was an undrafted player. Like some fans, think he's like an old guy or something, but he's still really only 23 years old. But I think it's just the fact that he's kind of been at training camp for 3-4 seasons now. It makes it seem like he's been around for so long, but 23-year-old's a defenseman and it's really his first full crack, at the NHL. He's still a really young player. Defense is the hardest position to play in the league, obviously. I think for him, it's just consistency based. Like you see the flashes of him having good games, and what his strengths are obviously the fact that, pretty good hockey IQ, makes a nice outlet pass. He has that size and good reach with his stick, but just being consistent with the defensive play in his zone. And I think just being able to like clear the net and not get overpowered, because it's funny that even though he has that size, you'll see him kind of get overpowered in a sense and outwork sometimes in certain battles. I think that's where the coaching staff kind of gets frustrated, because you're such a big guy. You should be able to position yourself better in those situations. I think it's a bit of learning, at the NHL level for him still a young player. So we kind of see him getting rotated a bit with Stahl and some other young guys on the team. So I think a lot of it is consistency based for Zamula, but if you can put it together and put it all together, probably, a really good number 4. But even if he ends up being a third pair guy, you still need those guys on your team to be successful nonetheless, and guys that can move the puck too. So I think it'll be interesting to kind of monitor and see if, he can kind of take some of those mistakes that he's been making and learn from them, and not make the same ones down the line in the season. I think that we'll see him kind of get back into the lineup more if he can do that. But it'll be interesting to see, like, let's say if he does continue to make those mistakes, do they want to get like another younger defenseman some more opportunities as well here, like an Andre, maybe bring him back up, or maybe like a Jennings, for example, or an Adard, right? Well, I guess we'll see what happens, but it should be interesting. There's still even more young defensemen for the Flyers to kind of give a taste to in the NHL.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's get into the prospect segment. We got a lot to go through, so we can just fire through these guys, and let's talk about, I will say, the second most exciting Flyers prospect, but I will say he's pretty high on the list. He's a very close second with the type of season he's having. Cutter Gauthier. We definitely have talked to you about him so far, already a good amount of times, but I believe he was just announced for Team USA's World Junior Championships. There's no surprise there. I mean, he's already played for Team USA with men in the Holinka tournament. So Cutter Gauthier is having a real strong season with the NCAA with Boston College. And what are your thoughts on Gauthier? What do you expect for, him to do this year in the NCAA? And what kind of impact do you think he'll have on the Flyers?
Well, I mean, he's, he was a wing before he got drafted, and we all heard the talk that he's going to be a center. He's going to be a center, and he played center last year. Had a great freshman year, playing center again this year. But Boston College doesn't necessarily need him to be the franchise type guy, because they got the freaking trio from the NTDP, Perot, Smith, and Leonard. Boston College is a phenomenal team. They have great goaltending. They have a great, really clean defense who manages the puck brilliantly. And then they have this attack. So Gauthier is kind of like a unicorn in a way, because that other line they're all smaller guys, although they play physical. I say smaller than he is, because he's a big guy. But with him, he is unloading shots. Every time I watch him, he's not hesitating. He has a great shot. And so I think that's why you're seeing a change or a shift in his stats, where he went from kind of like mostly I think it was even between goals and assists, but this year he's scoring more goals, and he's pacing for like a 30-goal sophomore season in the NCAA. That is outstanding production. Doesn't matter what he does assist-wise, but he's killing penalties. He's taking big draws. And Boston College has legit national title aspirations. It's been a while for them, and that program was really proud under Jerry York, and they tried recruiting, and it just was not working. They were always near the bottom of the Hockey East standings, but now they're one of the top teams in the country. Their penalty killing is phenomenal, and he's a part of that. And of course, the goaltending of Fowler, the Canadians draft pick. So, the question, really, I don't have any questions about his upside. I don't have any questions about him becoming a good NHLer. He'll be a top 6 guy for the Flyers. I think he's going to show up. He's got the IQ, he's got the hands, the vision, the physicality, the intangibles, the defense. He's got it all. The only thing I'm really questioning is I'm curious about how this World Juniors is going to unfold, because Team USA is obviously disappointed after what happened last year and even before that. They have goaltending finally with the duo of, well, it's not announced yet, but it's probably going to be Augustine and Fowler. Who's the top line center for Team USA? Is it going to be Gauthier because he's got the age and the experience, or is it going to be his teammate Will Smith? The other thing is, because of the way that the team is set up, do you have Gauthier shift over to wing? Because if Logan Cooley was there, I think Logan Cooley would kind of force Gauthier to the wing, and you'd have just a ridiculous top line of Cooley, Gauthier, and Snuggerud. But now it looks like it's probably going to be Gauthier centering that top line with Snuggerud, and maybe, or does he play wing with Nazer and Snuggerud? There's a lot of options, so I'm curious to see. But I will say this, and I'm not a big World Junior guy and this and that, but I am American, and I want these guys to win. I want to see a really dominant tournament out of Gauthier. I want to see him take over, because if he does that, and then the Smith line is the Smith line, and the goaltending that the Americans have, I think they're going to walk to the gold medal. So really, do I call him a franchise player still? Absolutely. We're all in love with Michkov, and it's easy. I mean, it's tough not to notice what he's doing. But Gauthier is still a legit number one center, franchise type center upside. I mean, he's got it all. So, yeah.
So I've kind of been saying that I don't think he needs any AHL time. He seems like the type of guy who, because of his age as well, he's going to be coming in, and after 2 years of college hockey, I really believe that he's going to be walking onto the Flyers, barring some kind of disastrous preseason. But I really see him just kind of being in the Flyers top 9 next year immediately, and maybe forcing one of the guys that's in there. Maybe Cam Atkinson doesn't come back or something, but one of those top guys getting out of there, and he kind of just walking into the NHL. Do you see him doing that and kind of living under Tortorella's expectations?
Well, I think Tortorella's going to like him a lot. And I think I mentioned before that he's been leaned on for some big moments, not just at the NTDP level, the international level, but also in college. He's on the ice for 5-on-3 kills. He's taking big draws. So that's the kind of stuff that Tortorella likes. He can play physical. He can deliver the big hit. It's going to boil down to where the Flyers as an organization, right? Let's just say, hypothetically speaking, that they make the playoffs this year and they go on a run like the Rangers out of nowhere a couple of years ago, and they go to the conference finals. I mean, that'll really piss off the tanking crew. But let's say they go so that would mean that Smith, that Jones and Briere, in a way, would kind of owe it to the fan base and the city to build on that and buy and acquire. So that will make it tougher. If they don't, and they miss the playoffs, then make it a little bit easier. But I'm telling you, that you guys know this. The competition is intense. It really is. And little by little now, we're seeing guys, I don't want to say drop off, but now it's like, oh, what do I do? So to answer your question, I'm not trying to tap dance around it, because I like making predictions. But I think a year in the AHL might be a little bit much. But if he can maybe get if Lehigh Valley's in the playoff picture, if he could join them after that, get some experience there, sign his contract, join Lehigh Valley, show up at the main training camp, blow them away, and then make it impossible for them to say no. I think that's probably the likeliest way he makes the team.
Yeah, I think so too. That's my prediction. So
yeah,
I think you want to
sure. Sorry. Yeah, I think for Gauthier, obviously the question was, winger or center. I mean, with his play at Boston College, he's kind of cementing himself as a center. I think just being able to take open ice. He's doing well with his defensive assignments too, and that's only going to bode well for him in the future when he makes it to the NHL, because he's already getting that experience. Playing center in the NCAA and having to deal with those responsibilities that it takes to do that. I think just the volume shooting is something that's kind of crazy to look at. I think in 16 games, so far he has 90 shot attempts.
Yeah, that's
ridiculous. And in 32 games last season, he had 130. So he's almost close to that 130 mark in only 16 games. So that's nuts, just in terms from a shot volume perspective for him. So I think that only bodes well. But obviously, for the Flyers, I think, and as a Flyers fan, I mean, you can't be anything but excited when you see numbers like that. 12 goals in 16 games, he has the potential to maybe even have a goal a game pace here, right? If he has a big game or two coming up. So I think just the potential for him is unreal. And like you said, I'm interested really to see what happens at the World Juniors, because I mentioned this on the last episode. The last 2 World Juniors he was a part of, he showed some production and played well. He didn't really dominate or to kind of take control for the US. So I think that will be the next step for him here, kind of take control and dominate in this type of tournament, since he's been in it the past couple of seasons already. So
yeah, well said. I'm super excited for Cutter Gauthier. It'd be nice to at least get one of the Flyers' top prospects over here soon. So let's talk about 2 more guys that I think are also in the mix for the WJC. That's Devin Kaplan and Cole Knuble. Knuble being a newcomer to the NCAA, and Kaplan obviously in his sophomore year here. Where do you how do you see both of their seasons going so far? And do you see them also in that mix for the WJC?
Were they on the updated were they on the camp roster?
I thought they were, but I could 100% be wrong. They are making that assumption based off the fact that were invites last year.
I could be wrong too, but I think the issue was that they were at the WJSS and they weren't added to
they weren't. Okay. That's
maybe I could be mistaken. I think if anyone was
true.
Yeah, I have it somewhere, and I apologize if I'm wrong. But anyway, to answer your question, Knuble is on Notre Dame. He's not producing, but I watched a couple of games because I wanted to see how good the freaking goalie Bichsel is doing, and he's gonna be in the NHL probably within 2 years. He's such a good goalie. The stats look horrific, right? He's got like 2 points, I think, in like
16 games.
16 games, but he's getting his looks. He's playing well defensively, and he's not the only one on Notre Dame. It really is. It's like collectively, they've had a lot of bad puck luck. They get their chances. They dominate games sometimes. It's not just him. I think their leading scorer is only got whatever. I think it's like they got I forgot his name. He's got like 12 goals. Yeah, Landon. Is it Landon Slaggert?
Yeah.
So he's a freshman. He was an overage as a draft pick, so he's not like your typical draft pick and then goes right to the college where he's 19. But again, I like the way he plays. I just he's one of those guys where he's going to show up to camp. He's going to push people because of his enthusiasm, his effort, his two-way play. He's good on faceoffs. I think they have him playing in the top 6, which is really top 9, I guess. But think about it: you got 1 goal, 1 assist. Your team's got a winning record. I think they're a ranked team, Notre Dame, and he's still getting minutes. So the coach obviously likes what he's seeing. But so I wouldn't worry about the stats too much. As far as Kaplan goes, I know for a fact that he was not invited to the World Junior Camp, which is really surprising to me.
Yeah, him and Knuble both weren't. Yeah.
Okay, so
thanks.
So Kaplan is incredibly versatile, and BU, I'm not going to say he's the MVP of BU because he's not. They got Celebrini, they got Lane Hudson. But if you look at the Terriers roster, yeah, they got some NHL draft picks, but there's a lot of undrafted guys on there, a lot of older types. I would say it's an experienced team, and he does a lot of the dirty work. He's played PP1. He's played PK1. He's got length. He's got a great shot. So I thought that maybe Team USA is we got plenty of skill. We got probably 5 of the top, let's say, 15 forwards in the entire tournament that are going to be there. So we're not worried about scoring. Unfortunately, for Kaplan, they picked other intangible toolsy guys. But he's improved his scoring by a little bit. He's not, like I said, the main guy BU, but he's like a glue guy, really smart kid. He's mature. He's got a good IQ, reliable with the puck. So, I didn't watch the WJSS all that much for the Americans. I usually just watch it for the European kids. And so I can't speak to whether he had a really bad showing there, which is why he wasn't invited. But I like the way, listen, BU is going to be challenging for a national title. They're a tough team to play against, and he's a reason why. So development-wise, I think he's fine.
Yeah, and he looks to project to be an NHL player regardless, right? At very least a bottom 6 forward in the NHL from what I can tell.
I think he's going to go to Lehigh Valley after college. It'll probably be a 4-year kind of situation. I think he's going to go to Lehigh Valley, and if LaPerriere is still there, he's going to love him.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's not like he's demonstrative and I don't want to call him quiet, but he does what is asked of him, and he does it well, specifically off the puck. So I like the pick at the time. I think I had him ranked a little bit higher than where they took him. I think they took him in the third round.
Yeah.
I think I might have him in the second round. So yeah, I'm a pro Kaplan guy, and just another wing, another one of those wings.
Yeah.
That, like he's going to show. It's just crazy. It's crazy how competitive it's going to be.
Yeah, well, I love it. Vasili, anything to add there?
Yeah, I think for Kaplan, I mean, he's got 10 points in 16 games, so it's not a bad start for him, obviously, there, playing in a tough division. And BU is a good team, so, I mean, he's going to have a chance to potentially even get into the Frozen Four maybe here. I think for Kaplan and even for Knuble as well, like, obviously, bottom six options, those are the goals and kind of what the Flyers are looking for out of those types of players. But for Knuble specifically, who's been struggling a little bit, one thing you have to factor in is first year for him in college hockey, right? So I mean, there is an adjustment period there, especially for a guy who's playing the USHL the past couple of seasons. So I think there'll be guys to monitor for the Flyers and for Flyers fans, but obviously look to them after college, maybe to be players that won't necessarily make the jump directly to the NHL, but probably need AHL seasoning, and then from there potentially get their shots, right?
Yeah, and to your point, I looked up the rest of his team, Steve, and it looks like Notre Dame really does struggle to score beyond their top two guys. So even though he only has 2 points on the year, there aren't, guys are putting up 5-6 points on that team. Nothing,
it's kind of like it's
crazy.
A situation like a bend don't break to a degree because they could generate offense. They're just not finishing.
Yeah.
So it's frustrating. Like a lot of posts, a lot of like, oh, I just missed it, but tap in. And unfortunately, it's been like that for the whole season, almost for Notre Dame. But the goalie's been phenomenal. He's going to probably be a Hobie Baker finalist.
Yeah, and his father was a late bloomer. I can kind of think that Cole Knuble will also be like that. Type of guy who gets better as he gets older and uses his intelligence to be successful.
Yeah.
So let's go to the cornerstone of this franchise. We have talked about him nonstop. He gets more attention than the Flyers at this point. And that's like I'm not even joking. Like if we do a video on him, it always does the best. I've been saying online quite a bit in the stats, and Vasili's brought up a bunch of stats on this podcast. They are on a generational pace at this point. Nothing unexpected. Maybe he's doing even a little bit better than I expected, especially considering how unsuccessful his team is overall in the KHL. But Matvei Michkov, we love him. We know you were high on him, but give us an update and take your time and say as much as you want on him, because we'll eat it up, and so will everybody else listening.
Well, I'm going to disappoint you because I really have nothing left to say about the kid. He is done. He's proven me right. He's proven me right nonstop. Okay. And I'm not one of those guys that, I got to post all the right things I've done and hide the mistakes I made. But this one was personal. And you guys know that because I got fired up way back when in like 2021 that, no, this kid is legit. And you're always going to have a small slice of, the NHL, I guess, community who's going to root for him to fail. And they're going to come up with think about all the bullshit that we've been hearing for the last like year plus about like his defense and his effort. And they're like, oh, he's one dimensional. Listen, this kid, first of all, Sochi is better than they were last year. Right? They went out, they got Husnadinov, a very good Minnesota Wild prospect, by the way. And I think he's playing on the same line with him. I saw that he's sick though, and he's going to miss the KHL All-Star game.
Yes,
which hey, you know what? I'm going to be a conspiracy theorist and be like, Ska is mad at him, and they contacted Putin. Of course, I'm just bullshit. But it's just, he's going to miss the All-Star game. But the fact is that you have a 19-year-old kid, soon to be 20. I think did he just turn 20?
I think he's still 19.
He's a Sagittarius. He's a December baby like me, so that's why another reason why I like him so much. But listen, he's basically a point-a-game guy. If you compare him to the Kaprizovs and the Panarins and the Kuznetsovs and the Tarasenkos and any of those guys that
he's outpacing them,
yeah. So the only thing I'll say is this: the only people that should really care about what he's doing right now are Flyers fans. And I have a feeling you guys are going to get tired.
He turns 19 in 5 days or 4 days.
Oh,
So
wait, when's his birthday?
It's the 9th, but
Oh, mine's the 10th.
he's
All
still
right. So I love Michkov. I love Michkov.
he's still 18. I just want to make that clear.
Okay, all right. So
Yeah.
so the build up and the anticipation is going to be great. And I use the Forsberg example with Quebec. That you just wait, you see him perform. The one thing I'm really upset about though is the fact that he can't play internationally. That you would be seeing him at every tournament. You'd be seeing him at the World. Do you know what he would do to the World Juniors? He would embarrass the field. He would embarrass the field. So, I mean, all I got to say is this. At the end, I'm just going to wrap it up. All right. First of all, Torch calls him the Mad Rut. Torch called him the Mad.
I was going to bring that up. Yep.
All right. This kid has done exactly what you would want. I'm sorry. He's done more than what any draft plus one prospect has done. If you consider, and I'm talking about in the NHL, I'm talking about, so I'm not talking about Crosby and McDavid and what they did after the draft. In terms of non-NHL draft plus ones, this might be one of the best performances we've ever seen because he's on this intense pace and he's sharing the puck. He's still trying to do his lacrosse goals, and he will not stop doing them. There's like a league-wide, like they colluded to stop him from scoring the Michigan goals because he did it so many times. But again, he's just almost like a borderline complete player from an offensive standpoint. And, it ties back to that competition. He's going to show up to camp in 26 or whatever it is, and the world's going to stop. Like the hockey world will stop. The media, the requests when he's in camp, he's going to be a megastar without even playing a game yet. So now actually the flip side to that is the pressure and the expectation. But I mean, listen, just keep doing what you're doing and proving the doubters wrong. And I think that he really does care that people, he probably said the right thing by saying, I don't care about where I'm drafted. I don't think. I think he knows what he did to Canada. He knows how he outperformed Bedard. How many people could say I outperformed Connor Bedard when it's peer to peer? So yeah, I mean just and what the flip side and I guess a sidebar to this all is Reinbacher in Switzerland is not playing well. And Canadians fans are freaking trying to, he's got a good stick on puck. And dude, you passed on Zach Benson. Zach Benson's in the NHL.
Yeah.
And they're like, we might have a fourth defenseman with the fifth. Listen, I like Reinbacher, but
it wasn't the move. So, and just to add to your Tortorella comment, the fact that John Tortorella is tracking a player that's not in the NHL, from what I can tell, is unheard of. And the way he referenced it is that he is preparing this team to play with Michkov. So I think even when John Tortorella looks at Michkov, he sees something very special there and not a one-dimensional player and a guy who he immediately is already penciling into his lineup when he gets here. And I think the Flyers are going to be very aggressive trying to get him over here before his contract ends.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely relationship issues with, him and Scott. So who knows what's going to happen there in terms of maybe getting him over early. I mean, it's too really early to tell for us. But I mean, for the Flyers perspective, I'm sure if somehow they can get him over before the 3-year contract ends with Scott, I mean, they'll be ecstatic. But like, if you just look at the points in the games that he's played, right? Like 26 points in 29 games as an 18-year-old in the KHL, like it's unheard of. And he's essentially outpacing most like generational type or elite type players that you are aware of at that same age level in the KHL, like a Kucherov, like a Tarasenko, like even Ovechkin, like the Russian Super League way back when. So just what he's doing is kind of unheard of for a player of his age in that league. And it's crazy, right? Because if you look at the preseason and how he played for SKA, like I believe he had over a point a game in the preseason playing center, and that's a position that he's never even played before those preseason games. So it's almost crazy to me that they loaned him out and did not keep him when he was one of the best players in the preseason on their team. But I think it's just the fact that typically a team like that's that competitive in that league isn't going to play an 18-year-old player. I think it's more of a politics type of thing versus the skill set. But for Michkov, what impresses me the most is just you can see on the ice, like when you watch him, just how smart of a player he really is. Like he knows the areas of the ice to go to just create high danger opportunities and create scoring opportunities for his teammates. And just the shot as well, I think doesn't get enough love just in terms of what he can do with the accuracy. Like I think he's a really underrated shooter, and that doesn't get talked about as much just in terms of like the playmaking skill that he has as well, just his vision there. So I just think from the Flyers perspective and just the way he's scoring in the KHL, there's obviously elite potential and even generational potential for him. And I think for the Flyers, once they kind of get him and a goatee over, I mean, it's kind of all forces a go in terms of, okay, we're looking to be a playoff team consistently once they get those two guys on the team, essentially.
Yeah, and here's what you got to consider too about Michkov is like this is now year 2 in the KHL. The KHL, the opposition knew about him way before that, so it's not out of the question that opposing teams or their coaches, when they're briefing their guys before the games, they're like, "Dude, Michkov, freaking." So they try their best to take away time and space, and they cannot do it. It's like what you said, Vasili. He is so smart. He just senses. I've never seen anybody predict puck travel at a junior level as well as Michkov and Bedard. And that's why I felt like, forget about the stats. It's just that sixth sense that they had more so than Jack Hughes. And he was phenomenal. More so than McDavid, more so than Austin Matthews. Go down the list that when they played against their peers as 17, 16 years old, those two were on a different level. And, the fact that he's able to continue to produce when everyone knows, it's just like Ovechkin. Remember, they always say, "Oh, well, why are you letting him shoot from there? You know he's gonna." That's what great players do, and I think that was like one of the biggest reasons why I felt that we should ignore all the noise. There was an article that I came across, and during the preseason, where some guy said that Demidov was better than Michkov because he was promoted. And Michkov was like a healthy skull. Remember the healthy scratch? I'm like, dude, okay, listen, you got to, and this is what, listen, fans do that, social media, I get it. But like, think about that. Like the hatred for this kid is still alive. That there are people going to be rooting against him. And he's, I think, what was that scene in like Billy Madison where like he calls up Steve Buscemi and he's like, "Hey, I'm sorry that I used to bother you." And like, he's like cross him off the list. I think Michkov has that list. I think he has a list of like journalists and like opposing scouts. And
I'm proving like, you wrong, and you wrong.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I don't buy any like he's professional. He doesn't care about that. No, I think he does. I think
it puts a chip on his shoulder for sure. Like he seems like a very competitive kid.
Yeah.
In general. Yeah, and I think this adds to that.
Flag. They said that was a red flag. That he's too competitive. He rubs his teammates the wrong way.
Michael Jordan was too competitive too.
The wrong way.
Look at Nathan McKinnon right now.
The wrong way. You know why he rubbed them the wrong way? Because they couldn't measure up to their standards. So, yeah, just like I said, the rest of the division. Be thankful he's not here.
Well, the way I kind of see him, I mean, everything I see, he's just a complete game changer. I've never seen a Flyers prospect of this caliber, at least not in my time. Not a guy who produces like this, not a guy who produces, above expectations. In effect, the names that he's out producing of the past, all indications point towards generational level of talent. And I guess we'll end it on here, and I'll end it with this question for you, Steve. Do you think, let's say, I don't know, let's fast forward 2 years. Do you see this guy rivaling Connor Bedard as being one of the best young players in the league? I mean, we see what Jack Hughes is doing now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It might be like an Ovechkin Crosby situation where you have the center in the wing. But I think the impact is going to be immediate. I've said this before. He is going to arrive tempered. He's going to arrive like ready. You don't play 4 seasons or 5 seasons or whatever it's going to be in the KHL and just show up like, I have to adapt. Like, okay, so who's the guy? Gusev? Gusev was like an example of a guy who just tore it up in the KHL, Devils made a big deal to get him, I think, from Vegas, and he was a complete dud. And he went back to Russia, and nothing ever happened to him with him. But that's a different story because he was like 27 or 28. Michkov is going to show up at like 22 or 21 or 22, or I think 22. It's going to be like you guys might be younger, but the Forsberg situation is the best comparison because the only difference with like the hype with Forsberg really reached a crescendo when he scored that gold medal winning goal against Canada. So of course, Canada's playing in the Olympic for gold. They're playing against Sweden, and he pulls off the freaking move. A move it was on his stamp in Sweden. That's how. So that was like the what's the word I'm looking for Forsberg? Like the reputation, the mystique, everything. We knew about it, and I'm hoping that we could get Russia back into international play because when he's doing that against NHLers at like the Men's Worlds or like whatever, then it's going to add to the hype. And I think he's going to deliver.
Well, don't a lot of like the TV scouts and the ones that really speak to the general public, not the ones behind the scenes, don't they really go off of those tournaments and the fact that Michkov couldn't play in those tournaments kind of probably hurt the fact that, I don't know if it hurt it with NHL teams necessarily, but it hurt that public perception where if he did go and play in those tournaments and play against Bedard and outproduce Bedard, people would probably have been screaming for him to be taken in the top 3 and
top
maybe
2.
A team would have taken a risk. Right, exactly. He should be number 2.
Why was Slavkovsky? What happened that made him the men's worlds, right? Just like Capo Caco was elevated to a potential rival to Jack Hughes. And I was a part of that because I watched with my own eyes that Caco's dominating men, NHL players scoring on NHL goalies. So I agree with that if he played in additional tournaments beyond the Hlinka in 20 or 21 or whatever it was in the 2021 U18 Worlds, think what the World Juniors does to people, makes them freaking nuts. They go crazy. A guy scores 2 goals, he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. If a guy gives up 5 goals, he's going to be in the scrap heap. And that's just how the media covers it. And I don't agree with it. But at this point, though, who cares? Because he's Flyers property. He's doing exactly what was expected of him. There's no red flag. There's no concern. And the fact that the team is winning a little bit, they're getting production out of their homegrown guys. 15 out of the 26 Flyers who played a game this year were drafted by the team. So this is mostly a homegrown effort. Doesn't matter that some of them are older from like Couturier and etc. These are homegrown guys. So the Flyers, I think, realize that. And if I'm Keith Jones, if I'm Dan, I just kick my feet up and I'm just freaking waiting and just let everything play out. But I don't know if they paid him a lot of money. Scott did a lot of money. It was almost unprecedented contract considering because he was like 15 or 16 at the time. So that might be tough to get him early, but I don't know
the money. And the Flyers have Comcast behind them, who have a very large amount of money behind them. But it'd be willing. What is Scott even willing to do that? Right.
I mean, it could be. It just could be like vendetta.
Right. It could be more personal.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it past them.
Scott's probably wishing they kept him on the team just in terms of how he's playing right now. But
it's weird too because when he plays against them, he like freaking torches
lights them up. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so it's like he's clearly like who's at fault? Was it Michkov who was underperforming, or you just didn't know? And that's one of the cases where I will take the player's side and say no, like you did him dirty. It's not his fault. It's your fault. Usually, I always take the team side, like, hey, he gave me a shot, didn't work out. But yeah, I mean, he's phenomenal. Just a joy to watch.
Yeah, can't wait. Cannot wait for him. That's why I keep hoping that they do buy that contract out. I don't want to wait till he's 21, 22. I want him here next year. All right.
More fun hockey to watch for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we'll really be talking about the Flyers being a playoff team. All right, so let's move on to some other players. The next one on our list, we'll talk about 2 guys on the same team here, the London Knights, led by 2 of the Flyers prospects, Denver Barkey, who's having a very good season right now, over a point per game, and looking like he could have even potentially gone higher in the draft than where he was. And then Oliver Bonk, who is I would say continuing where he last left off and maybe even doing slightly better offensively at this point. What can you tell us about these two guys?
Well, London is, again, another good year for them. They don't have like a main superstar. You want to say Dickinson, the guy who might be a top 5 pick in the draft this year. I don't really get that superstar vibe from him. Talk about Dickinson. Barkey, so they broke up that line, right? They had to break up the line. The line last year was Barkey and Cowan, who was a first-round pick, and Barkey was a 4th-round pick, which blew my mind. And then I think it was Winterton, a Seattle prospect, who said it. Well, he's moved on, and they slot in the guy, the overage of that. I forgot who drafted him. Jacob Julian, a thick, strong, good 200-foot center with a lot of good offensive skill. Then they broke up that line, so now they have him on a line with Gazazov and Julian. And again, this is like an intense competitor. He's the team's leading scorer. I think Cowan might have a higher points per game, but Barkey is actually leading in points. But listen, the energy, he's not a big guy. I still don't understand why he went as late as he did. Watching London play last year, he was a top line guy. They drove their run to the playoffs, almost won an OHL title. So maybe he has a little bit of a chip on his shoulder because he went so low. This is a kid who was, I think he was a 1st round or maybe a 2nd round OHL priority pick. He played for Team Canada. I think he won gold with them at the Helenka. So he's a notable kid. And now we're seeing the next step. So he went from being a point-a-game guy to being over a point-a-game guy. He's going to set career marks in scoring, and he does everything. He hits, he skates, he kills penalties. So, again, it's not like a Connor McLennan situation, blast from the past, where he's just surrounded by this intense elite talent, and he's getting fed pucks and just slamming them. And I like McLennan too, even though he's not probably not projecting to anything. But Barkey is a guy that should have been drafted higher. End of story. As far as Bonk goes, like you said, you're seeing more production out of him now. He's paired with Isaiah George. I know the fans get mad at me for saying this. Isaiah George is definitely improving, but it is a roller coaster ride, and it seems like Bonk is the guy that has to kind of bail him out. Again, I like Isaiah George. I think he's got pretty good upside, but that London defense core is really good. Like, they have Jackson Edward, they have George, they have Dickinson, and they have, of course, Bonk. So to me, he's their number one. And, you look at him producing more right now. He's still playing for a title contender in the OHL. Flyers fans, some of them might be a little upset if they took him, or they look at the stats of like other forwards taken thereafter. Again, we talked about this. There was a hole on the right side. They needed some type of blue chip or potential top 4 guy on the I know, look, Ronnie Adams is good. They got Helga Grands. Okay, yeah, he's all right. But Bonk has the highest upside out of anybody on that right side. And so, he's developing fine. He's a vacuum cleaner on defense. He's a problem solver, and he's helping run the power play. So, really mature kid. I like the pick, even though he had him ranked a little bit lower. It all made sense to me. And both guys are key MVP type caliber pieces for London, which is one of the premier programs in all of Canadian Major Juniors. So it's not easy. It's not easy to play for the London Knights. Okay, you got Dale Hunter as your head coach. He's very demanding. You always have kids want to. It's kind of like Alabama with college football. Well, now I guess was it? Oh God, who's the number 1 team in the country now? I forgot who's but anyway, George.
College football. Sorry.
Okay, but point stands that these two guys have improved. And they didn't need to improve much because they had really good seasons last year, but they are improving, and you'll see them both at camp next year. I don't think that. I think age-wise they might have to stay another year, but you're looking at most likely some AHL playoff time at the end of the season, and yeah, like both players playing really well.
So let me ask you this about Barkey, and this is something we noticed about him when he was here. One, he stuck out during preseason. They kept him here for a while, him and Bonk, but Barkey still looks like he's 14 years old. Like he looks like a child. And I brought this up that, when I see a player who is physically undermature, right? Where he looks like he'll probably be a late bloomer as far as maybe he won't get taller or anything like that. But again, he really looks young. So it's going to take him a little bit of time physically, but he already outplayed a lot of the Flyers prospects in preseason. Do you think that plays to his advantage where, he's not there physically and he's already doing this? So what happens when the physicality, and he matures into, he's listed as 5'9", maybe he'll get an inch taller or something, but he'll never be that big of a guy. But, do you think that there might be a bit of more of a steal here with a guy who, might be kind of a late bloomer?
Absolutely a steal. Absolutely a steal. He's trending that way. I don't want to call him a steal just yet because that's still
Right,
playing
yeah, sure.
Right wing. He's a right shot, right wing. I could see him playing center if need be. But the right wing with the Flyers might be the best prospect wise. Might be the best in the league. Well, you got Michkov. You got, if you want to consider Forster still because he's still so young. You got Tuamala ripping it up. You got Brink. And I'm probably missing is Avon? I think Avon is
Avon is playing center or left.
Okay, you got Chernik, Brodzinski. Like there's a lot of right wings who are producing who are Flyers draft picks. So he's so versatile though, Barkey is, that he could play anywhere in the lineup. So I think that when these kids read the Sky reports, they read there's a lot of, and again, I'm not trying to make this personal, but like there are people that I feel write, kind of like clickbait type scouting reports on guys, and they're like, oh, well, he had a turnover, so he's a liability with it. Not really looking at the big picture. That I think that Barkey knows that people have criticized him for his. I think it bothered him that he went as low as he did, and so for him to show up to a camp and impress, it doesn't matter how old or young you look, how big or small you are. The league has trended, albeit with this coming draft, they're trying to go away from the smaller guys. But the fact that this kid can just keep continuously prove doubters wrong, and he's delivering in the process by scoring, by hitting, by if Dale Hunter vouches for him, then I'm sold. You know what I mean?
He reminds me of Konechny kind of in some ways with his intensity.
Yeah.
I agree. Just like being a small guy and not being afraid to kind of go into the corners or mix it up. Like at the draft, when I got to talk to him a little bit, he said he tries to compare his game to Braden Point. I mean, he's ever going to be that level of player? Most likely not. But in terms of a smaller guy who could still make an impact, right? Like that's obviously what you're looking for out of Barkey. I think it's a really good sign. Him and Bonk are going to get invited here to the junior selection camp for Canada. So that's obviously a great thing for their experience to play for the World Junior team there. I think, Barkey in general, right? It is surprising he kind of fell to where he did. I think he got drafted 95th overall, and most just like projections had him around the 50 range. So it is weird to see him.
I had him in the first round. I had him in the first round.
Oh, okay. Yeah, see, that's what I mean, right? So that even plays into it as well. And if you look at it, right, in 26 games, 35 points, that's 10th for OHL scoring as well at this point. So he's having a really good season. And Bonk himself, is kind of upping it up too. He's got a point per game versus kind of the 0.75 per game clip he was at last season. So both of them are improving, and they're both playing key roles for Dale Hunter, a coach, that demands a lot from his players even at the junior level. So I think that's a really good sign for both of these guys.
Yeah, well said, Vasili. Yeah, he seems like a guy who should have been taken at the end of the first round in Barkey's case, or like high second round pick, like a Morgan Frost type of position. But other people's losses are our gain. All right, let's move on to our next guy. And this guy is an overager. He's kind of newer to our organization, but he's having an excellent year in NCAA, and that's Massimo Rizzo. I don't think many people really know much about him outside of, some of the stellar highlights he's had this year. But again, the caveat there is that he is, much older than some of his competition, right? He's 22 years old. But what can you tell us about Rizzo?
Well, isn't he leading the freaking all Division I in scoring?
Yeah, he is.
Yes.
Yeah, so he was a Carolina pick. I think he used to play in the OJHL. I remember him from his draft year. So Carolina took him. Was it a trade or a signing?
We traded. It was kind of the D'Angelo trade. It didn't officially happen, and then it was sent to us.
Carolina is weird because they have drafted top 5 in terms of the number of draft picks they've had, and they don't never promote these kids. Jack Drury, he's like the only guy they promoted out of their last like 5-6 drafts. Well, and Jarvis. But so there wasn't any room for him. So I think in a way that the Flyers did they did their homework on him. Like, here's a kid who's plays for a really good program. He's a top line center. He's produced, and like they probably viewed him as a someone who's being blocked because Carolina's got like a zillion center prospects. So so the Flyers acquired him, and now he's one of the best players in college hockey, where he's centering the top line. So again, like, they don't have. I mean, the Flyers have bodies at center ice, and of course, we're going to consider Gauthier to be a center. But now that you have this other guy now, and McLaughlin is another one, where these guys are offensively inclined, so they got good size. They got, and again, Rizzo can run a power play by himself. So when you have all these wings, these finishers, right? You got Michkov, you got Tuamala, you got Forster, and all them. You need guys like Rizzo because he could play a 200-foot game, but for me, it's the playmaking that has always really stood out to me. So, he could finish too. He's not just a one-dimensional offensive type of player. So, it's basically a steal. Like, you stole, if he was a free agent, right? If he was a UDFA,
he'd be a top
bidding war. It would be a bidding war.
That's what it seems like to me. Like a Jimmy VC type of situation, right?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, well, he doesn't have an ELC yet from the Flyers, but I think he is kind of playing his way onto that at this point.
Sure.
Where it'd be worth the risk. Vasili, you want to add anything to Rizzo?
Just that for Rizzo, I mean, definitely poised for an ELC for the Flyers. And from their perspective, you acquire a guy and then he ends up being the top scorer, in his division for college hockey. I don't think you can really go wrong in that situation. So it'll be interesting to see him join the Phantoms to end the season potentially and just see kind of what he does at the AHL level. Especially if the Phantoms make the playoffs. I think it'll just be interesting to see if, does that scoring that you saw at the end at the college level there kind of make its way over into the AHL, right?
Yeah, and I think it'll be a great opportunity for him because he's not coming in as like a 19-year-old, right?
Yeah.
He'll be coming in as 22, 23-year-old. All right, next guy on the list is Alex Bump, also new to NCAA, right? Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah,
he moved to the NCAA, right? Because he moved over to Michigan. What can you tell us about Bump? He looked really strong when he was here. But again, that was amongst, kind of our prospect group. So we haven't seen too much of him outside of that. How's Bump doing?
Great. Western Michigan received, he was originally committed to Clarkson, which is definitely not it was Vermont. I think he was committed to Vermont, which, it's Hockey East, but it's not, it was the last time it was a powerhouse. I think it was when they had Martin St. Louis and Eric Perrin, like way back in the day, like in the early 90s. So I think he changed his commitment to Western Michigan. Western Michigan brought in they probably went out and they scouted every guy who's an NHL draft pick who was disappointed with their situation so they went out, they got Sam Colangelo, who was a second round pick of Anaheim a couple of years ago. They went out, they got the Costantini kid from Buffalo. They got Ethan Phillips, the speed demon from was a BU kid. And he's basically a top line wing on a dominant college team as a freshman. So, Bump, he's a Minnesota kid. I watched him at Prior Lake. He used to have 4 and 5 goal games, just dominant. But I wouldn't say that he was known as a goal scorer, as a wing. I always viewed him as a dual threat. But what I also liked about Bump is that teams would target him knowing he was the number one guy, and he would push back. He's a big kid. He's thick. He'd hit him back. So what you're seeing now is, listen, like Andy Murray's gone from Western Michigan. I don't know the new coach's name, but the team is like legit. They have Frozen Four aspirations, and he's the youngest guy in the team. He's not producing at like a point a game, but he's producing. What's the name of that freaking center? He's going to get their leading scorer is a guy. I forgot his name. There's two. Went.
Yeah, Went
is the right wing. And I forgot the center's name.
Granger.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's him.
Luke Granger.
Yeah, so that trio is one of the best lines in college hockey. And think about that. Like a 4th or 5th round pick or whatever Bump was, his first year out of the USHL, he's playing on a so yeah, I love him. I think I ranked him. He's one of those guys when I was doing my rankings, I said, you know what? I'm I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna reward this kid because I think the upside is immense. And I think I had him ranked in like 35 or 36 range. And we talked about him before. So yeah, huge bump fan. And the Flyers are probably ecstatic that he's playing for a Frozen Four contender.
Yeah,
on the top line.
I didn't realize he was playing top line, so that's
that's
me
awesome.
Neither. He was impressive here. Sorry, Vasili, go ahead, please.
No problem. Just to know that obviously he's playing top line for a potential Frozen Four contender, I think that's obviously really good progression from where he's been. And I mean, he has 10 points in 14 games in the freshman year, so it's really pretty close to point per game. So I think for the Flyers, obviously, I mean, to get a talent like that potentially, I mean, in the 5th round, you can't really go wrong. And for Bump, I think just the shooting prowess. Like I remember just seeing a lot of just his looks in like prospect camp and just some preseason looks. Just the way that he can shoot the puck. I mean,
they were Rick Nash. When I watched him play, I saw like flashes of like a Rick Nash. And okay, Rick Nash was a first overall pick. A perennial 40-goal scorer. I get it. I'm not saying he's going to be Rick Nash, but stylistically,
50% of him, I'll take it.
Yeah, stylistically, there are a lot of similarities.
Yeah, I love that. I love that comparison, and I kind of see it, to be honest with you. All right, next guy we have on the list is Alex Chernik.
Yeah.
This is a guy I know you're high on, and would love to get an update on him.
Well, his team sucks. his team sucks, but he's played. So I think he just turned 18, or I don't think he's a late birthday, but he's 18 years old. He spent, as a Slovak, a lot of time in the second division Allsvenskan in Sweden. Okay. Flyers love drafting out of Sweden. They always have these Swedish kids. And so, but he's a Slovak playing in Sweden. And he's always been, he's never played, I think, a full Allsvenskan season because he's always involved in tournaments. They always release him to let him go play for Slovakia. This kid is a phenomenal stick handler, puck protector, puck possessor. Vision. He's like, you really gotta. We're watching it. Again, his team stinks. There's a bunch of 30-year-olds on it, and so it's not like it's like a situation where it's like a young and up and coming team, and they're going through growing pains. He's one of the best players on the team with plenty of SHL caliber guys on it. So in a way, you could say that although he's not doing it in the SHL, he's only a draft +1. I forgot where they drafted him. Was he like a 3rd or 4th round pick?
He's fourth round pick, 120th overall. Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to see him at the World Juniors this year. Guarantee you. I know Slovakia is on a camp ride. He will play for Slovakia at the World Juniors. If they don't, it's because there's always politics. Oh, he's not playing in the Slovakian league. Let's not bring him.
He got invited, to their World Juniors
camp.
Team. Yeah.
So I don't know if they've finalized their roster yet, but if he does make it, I mean, you're going to see him probably with Dvorsky and like some of the big names there. And so, listen, he's out of all the right wings the Flyers have, he's one of those guys where he could be a specialist. He could be a power play specialist. He could be a playmaking setup guy from the flank. So it's not like go in front of the net and score dirty goals. Like, no, he's a guy that has skill. And so you want to see him, he's really, I don't know why he's still playing in the Allsvenskan, to be honest with you. I know that maybe he's got family in the area or something like that, but he's been in the Allsvenskan, I think, like 3 years. And I'm like, dude, go to like a better league. I think he could. But he's one of the top players on the team. All you could ask for. It's not like garbage minutes either. Like he's playing well, power play, late close, everything.
Yeah,
Nice.
It'll be interesting to see what he does. I mean, in the World Juniors, if he does end up making the team and it gets finalized, like you were saying, right? Like 12 points, 19 games, kind of playing in almost like top line role in the Allsvenskan. So that's really good production there. And I think when I saw him in dev camp earlier, just like the speed, like he has pretty underrated speed. For a guy,
and he can make plays at high speed. I'm sorry to cut you off. He can make plays at high speed. That's important.
No, definitely.
I'm excited about him. I like guys with talent like that. He seems like a no risk type of fourth round pick that could turn out to be more. All right, so just real quick, want to remind everybody, please like and subscribe. Follow us on iTunes and Spotify. Give us a ratings on iTunes as well. Be a humongous help. Okay, some others that we can go through quickly. One guy that I cannot find an update on him. I was hoping you knew what the situation was. Hunter McDonald. He's only played 1 year this year, or 1 game this year.
He's hurt.
I assume he's been injured. I don't know what the injury is, and I don't.
Long term, probably long term.
Oh, okay, that's a shame.
Yeah, you see. Well, here's the thing: Northeastern stinks. Say like their worst year in years. I think he played in like 1 game this year.
Yep.
But I went to Northeastern, so I have friends there, and from what I gather is that the season is lost, and there's probably more reason to not let him come back unless he's like really wants to. I don't know the nature of his injury. No one knows.
Okay.
So, but it looks like he's, and listen, he's not going to lose a year eligibility. I don't think he will, at least. So you can always make that year up. But physical stay-at-home defender. Pretty meat and potatoes kind of guy. But yeah, I don't think you'll be seeing him anytime soon.
Yeah, the one thing I do actually suspect, he did look really strong here in preseason. I could see the Flyers actually signing him and trying to bring him over kind of early, barring
you might
how much
see
space
him,
they have.
I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good.
You might see him, if Northeastern thinks that they could, shock the world. Maybe he wants to play in the Bean Pot. Maybe, he'll be ready by then, which is early February. And then, of course, after that, in March, you have the Hockey East tournament. So maybe he'll play for that if he's healthy enough. But we're not going to probably see him until after the new year.
Okay. All right. We'll look out for that. Anything to add there, Vasili?
It's just unfortunate because, like you said, Yariv, like he played actually really well in like the development and the rookie camps.
Yeah, and Fletcher called him out too, right?
Yeah, that he thought that he saw something in his game. So I mean, you have the GM calling out a guy that was picked pretty late in the draft. I mean, they obviously saw something in him there, so it's definitely interesting. But I'm sure we'll hear and see more from him down the line as things go along.
Yeah. Next guy on the list is Ryan McPherson in the BCHL.
You got me.
You got it? Okay. I thought maybe you would know him, but BCHL,
Yeah, no, I
not a high exposure league. No, it's all good. All right, then let's move on to the next
Sorry
one.
about that.
No, it's all good. This is the guy.
Well, McPherson. I will say this. So I haven't caught up with his progress, but I do remember that when he played on the is it the St. Andrews team? Was the AJHL? Was it Brooks? Was it?
Yeah, I believe so.
I don't know what he played for, but I remember that he was like the captain, like 200-foot guy.
Leamington Flyers is before the.
Who does he play for now?
He plays for Princeton V's.
Oh, Princeton.
Pennington.
Yeah.
Pennington.
So he was the guy. He was the guy that basically helped them win the title and was doing all types of. But this was last year, so I haven't really followed him. But if you want to edit it out, you could edit it out.
No, I don't care. I mean, it's not like you've been missing a bunch of names here. This is like the first time you ever didn't know.
And he's in the BCHL that nobody's really.
Well, no, I just like I said, it's my fault
caught up with him.
You gave me a list, and I guess I just missed them.
No, it's all good. But this next one I definitely know because you mentioned him earlier. Owen McLaughlin.
Yeah, McLaughlin or whatever it is.
McLaughlin. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. He's just a really good playmaker, and he's playing. Remember he had that. He was drafted. He's a local. Is he like a local kid? He's like
he might.
Is he the kid that's like not. From like the?
Yeah, I believe like he. I think like there was some situation this past year, like in rookie camp, where like I think him and Hartnell, like they took a picture
Phoenixville, PA. Yeah, he is.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Go ahead, he is. So he had. Remember, he was a late round pick, and then he went to the USHL. I think he went to Mount St. Charles High School in Rhode Island, which is like the prep program.
Yep.
Big time prep. But anyway, he lit up the USHL, and I was like, "Whoa!" But now, like you see, he's gone to North Dakota, and he's really was one of the better players. I mean, he's if you're into the special teams, but he's definitely a pass first guy. He's like similar to like Chernick, where he's just a Brink, also as well, where everything's just like on passes on the money, passes on the tape, great vision. So I think he's one of the top scorers for North Dakota. So you got to like what he's been doing.
Yeah, like 15 points in 15 games, obviously. So like that's a really big step up to be a point per game, where he was kind of a half a point a game last season for U of North Dakota. But
Yeah.
obviously for a 7th round pick to be a point a game, I mean, or point per game, like at that level, that's a really good thing. And it's a really good story. Like I was saying before, like I think there was some picture floating around online with like him and Scott Hartnell, like maybe 10 or something years ago when he was a kid.
Oh, wow.
And then he got to obviously meet him again, but as a Flyers prospect, like at their like rookie camp. So it's a
I
kind of
love
a
that
full
stuff.
circle thing, which is really cool. But yeah,
Nice. Good memory.
Hey, you notice the trend though. When you notice the trend, like every kid that we're talking about in college is, if whether they're producing or not, and most of them are producing, they are playing key minutes.
yeah,
They have a key role. They're playing PP1. They're playing top six. They're ranking among, well, most of them at least, ranking among the team leaders in scoring. Of course, in Rizzo's case, McLaughlin, like they're leading the team or they're leading the nation in scoring. So this is listen, what you can only watch these kids so much, right? If you're looking for little tiny mistakes here and there, at the end of the day, when you're one of the team's best players and the coach of that team is entrusting them with key roles and key minutes and key situations, that's exactly what you want. Because if they're stuck on a bench, if they're not playing, they're fourth line in college, they're pouting. I'm going to leave the program, go someplace else. You're not getting any of that, right? There's really no like a drama surrounding any of these kids. Like, oh, well, he's hurt. And he was benched the other day because the coach didn't like his effort. You're not getting any of that. All these kids are living up to the expectations. And in many cases, they're exceeding expectations. So this is why the Flyers should easily have one of the top ranked farm systems in the game. They have to, because you can't have all these kids performing at such a high level and outperforming what was expected out of them, or meeting those expectations, and not reward the organization for doing that.
Yeah, and it's valuable experiences too for these like younger players, right? Like they're playing, like you said, Steve, like important minutes, important roles on their teams. Like you were saying, right? If they were players that weren't in these situations, maybe you could look at the Flyers prospect pool and say it's not as strong as it is. But to see these guys actually having like cheat out roles essentially on these teams, it's only a good thing. So
yeah, and also the fact is that when these kids are on the ice, they're also facing the other team's top competition.
yeah.
So the other team, like when the other teams are, like I said with Michkov in the KHL, like when the teams are prepping for the next opponent, they're like, all right, we got to stop this guy. And it just so happens that all these Flyer college prospects are, well, most of these Flyers prospects, college prospects, are those guys.
And I love that. Personally, I think it's always a good thing, even if they just become AHL guys. It's still always beneficial to the organization.
Yep, agree.
All right, so this is one of the only defensive prospects that the Flyers have. We brought up Hunter McDonald and Oliver Bonk, but Carter Southern from the WHL. Can you tell us anything about him?
He's still a project. With Southern, I believe he was a high WHL pick? I forgot, but he's got the length. And when I watch him skate with the puck, you see it. Like you see him he has that ability to. So I don't know what he's producing. I didn't see his
5
stats.
goals, 8 assists in 24 games, 13 points, plus 12.
Yeah, so you definitely like seeing that in a kid, and he is a right shot, isn't he?
Yep,
so,
right shot at 6'3".
So again, like in a way, well, just don't kill me on this, but you see a little bit of Sanheim in him, except from the right side. But there's still some rawness there, right? So like he's physical one shift, he's not physical the other shift. He's handling the puck cleanly one shift, he's not. But in terms of skating with the puck, crisp tape-to-tape passes, clearing the net front, little things like that. You see him in bits and pieces, and people thought that he could have gone higher in the draft. That he had this I don't want to say boom or bust potential, but he had almost like a hidden gem type quality to him. But I still want to see a little more consistency. I want to see him cleaner with his puck management, and I think that he's definitely improved. So put it that way. Like my misgivings from last season a lot of them are more like, okay, well, he's actually playing better now, more consistently than last year, but there still is a level of inconsistency, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No,
No, definitely. There's like a natural progression. I think, I mean, if you just look at the statistics, obviously, 13 points in 24 games this year. Last year, 23 points in 68. So like you already see, right? Like he's only 10 points off from his total of last year. So you see that natural progression in the game in terms of like the puck handling, jumping to the offense. So it's definitely a positive there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And with the size, you know, being 6'3", right-handed, you know, I understand where his value is in the draft position. All right, let's move on to some Phantoms players, and then we'll go to goalies within the Flyers prospect pool, and then we'll finish off with a little bit of draft thoughts for this upcoming draft. So one guy I definitely want to talk about. He has been fantastic for the Lehigh Valley Phantoms. Right now, he's in the top 20, maybe top 15 in rookie scoring, or he was top 10 in rookie scoring. I don't know if that's still the case right now, but Samu Tuomala, a guy who's gone from, in most fans' eyes, to a forgettable prospect to probably being the best prospect on the Phantoms at the pro level. And we know John Tortorella really liked him, and he got a very long look at camp. And personally, you know, just watching him skate, the way he skates on his edges, his ability to do, you know, have an offensive game, but, you know, maybe be a perfect third line player. Maybe he's got a little bit more than that in him. But I am very impressed, and he's playing top line right now for the Phantoms and producing pretty much every night. So Sammy Tuomala, what can you tell us about him?
I love that kid. I had him in the first round back in 2021. I loved him. I watched him play. He's this wiry kid, and he playing for Carpat in the SM League. Well, really the U20 Carpat team, and then like. You know, so I look at him. He played on the Finnish national team, so U16, U17, and you're like, all right, well, he's slight of frame, so let's just automatically, you know, kind of stereotype him as the one-dimensional finesse winger who scores a lot of goals because he's got good speed and a good shot, and he plays with good teammates. Wrong. Okay, he is a really good physical, competitive player. So even though he's not weighing a lot, this is what I saw with my own eyes for like years. The issue is that he was not producing with Carpat's A team. And so when you look at the numbers, Carpat's a defensive-oriented team. Yeah, he's doing a lot of good things off the puck, but he's not scoring. So it was like maybe it was fair to say, well, the Flyers used remember, they didn't have a first-round pick that year. So I think he was their first pick of the draft. It was a second-round pick. And right off the bat, people are like, well, he's not ready. He's not ready. He's immature. He's physically immature, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, I never had an issue with that. I never had an issue with his physicality. He was physical, aggressive on the forecheck, quick skater. But the big deal with him was always scoring. Well, he's not scoring, and people aren't happy with the fact that, you know, he's supposed to be this, like, you know, future top line wing for the Finnish national team. Well, last season he goes to the Mestis, and he freaking lights it up. Absolutely destroys it. Listen, the Mestis isn't that great of a league, but it's a second division, adult age, if you want to call it that, circuit. Smashed it. He was on a great team. I think they were called Keter or some shit like that.
Yep.
Anyway, smashed it, and then shows up to camp this year, and you know, for Torts to say that, in a way, I felt like vindicated that I was always sticking up for this kid. I ranked him in the first round, and nobody talked about him. Right. And when I did my top 10 list, I didn't even have him in I might have had him actually when I did the Flyers thing on my Substack. I think I might have had him. No, I didn't have him in the top 10, but he would have been 11. And that's only because of the depth the Flyers have as an organization. I'm not going to rank him ahead of Kolosov or, you know, Gauthier and so on and so forth. But now that you see him in the AHL, completely debunked the myth that he can't play on a smaller rink, that he can't play with more physical guys. This guy is doing it all. And, you know, the one thing I love about him the most out of everything, beyond the intensity and he can play physical, is the release. The shot and the release is money. So I don't want to say that like I knew he was going to come to the AHL and be a point of game guy in his first couple of months, because I wouldn't have guessed that. But his last 2 seasons, he's playing against older, more physically mature players. He's delivering and had a good camp. I mean, yeah, like I said, just another wing. Just add him to the list.
Yeah.
Add him to the list.
Exactly.
He's a guy I definitely think will be on the Flyers in the near future. Sorry, Vasili, go ahead.
No problem. I think he's definitely gonna get a chance for sure next season to really cement himself potentially on the NHL team. And who knows, right? If there's injuries here, he might potentially get a call up at some point. Ole Lichel was actually just called up for the Flyers for their road trip out west.
He deserved it. He deserved it.
Yeah, Lichel, yeah.
Games.
Exactly. He's fourth in overall goal scoring in the AHL right now, so he's playing really well. But definitely Tuamala could have been an option for them to call up too. So he might get a look potentially down the line. But for Tuamala, like he's in the top 20 right now in assists in the AHL as a rookie. So that's pretty impressive for him, especially a guy coming over to North America for the first time, having to adjust to that rink size. It's not always an easy thing to do. So he's having a lot of success. And it's kind of funny, Steve, that you said that, people thought that he might not be able to handle the physicality, things like that, because one of the things I noticed the most actually in preseason from him and just like watching him in general, during that time and just some AHL games is his ability to retrieve pucks and actually get to pucks quickly just with that skating ability. So I think he's really done a good job there from what I've seen out of him. So I thought it was kind of funny that was a knock on him when he's actually shown, at least to me, that he's been really, really valuable in that part of the game. So
sure.
Yeah, I loved what I saw from him in preseason. He's grown on me considerably. So next guy on the list is J.R. Avon. Has had definite success in the AHL so far for a rookie year. Guy with a ton of speed. Yeah, he's a centerman, but they have him playing on the wing mostly right now. I could see him moving back over to center as he matures in the AHL. What can you tell us about Avon?
Well, Peterborough, right, with the Memorial Cup team last year. And he wasn't a draft pick. He was a guy they signed, I think, like in season.
Yeah,
was he like he was like an in-season UDFA, which is very rare. And then he's on this Peterborough team with Brennan Othman and all of them, and shocked the world when some of the wins that they were having. Well, they won the OHL title against London. So the transition to the AHL. I mean, listen, when you're that fast, when you have hands like he has, above all, everything, I love guys that when they come from junior to the pro ranks, AHL or whatever, that they could handle the freaking puck. I mean, handle it. I mean, receive it, and like especially off rush chances. Like how many times do you see the puck moved across the ice and it bounces off the blade? This guy is phenomenal. And the other thing that he adds is the finish, the skill. The create, like he is dangerous around the net. He's got hands. He can roof pucks from in tight. So, not surprised that he is doing well in the AHL. I guess shame on me. I'm surprised he, I didn't know who he was until up until last season, or like this early last season. So, another, like I said, if they're playing him on the wing, great. That's just it. But I see him more as a center, though. I think with that speed and his hands, you like his finish, everything like that. The Flyers have plenty of that. Okay, I think a guy like Avon, he's aggressive. He's kind of like Desnoyers on the forecheck. Desnoyers is probably one of the most aggressive forecheckers in the entire AHL. I think Avon could be that kind of a guy too in the NHL, where you just energy guy, but. He's a guy that I could see him being a 2020 guy in the NHL. I really do. There's something about these undrafted guys that when they finally land somewhere and they feel like they've arrived, it could be at the AHL level that, all right, once you've made it in the AHL, and I don't know what his stats are to date, but
pretty good. 5 goals, 2 assists in I don't know,
15 games.
15 games.
But still, Lehigh Valley's got skill all over that lineup, so it's not like
that's why he's playing the wing.
Yeah, there's not enough puck to go around for just one guy to light it up. But yeah, I'm a big fan of his. I really do.
Yeah, me too. So the other guy we have here, excuse me, who's been struggling offensively considerably, came in as a 3rd-round pick, and I know a guy you were high on. I think a lot of people were high on. And he actually had a great preseason and has been relatively silent, playing, 4th-line minutes essentially. But Zaid Wisdom, I don't know where his role is going to be with this franchise. Maybe they're going to take more time with him, but he's already 21 years old. I think he is kind of maybe in that bucket to, either walk as a free agent or potentially be traded. But what do you think about Wisdom?
I don't have a problem with his hands. I don't have a problem with his skating. I know skating was criticized, but I think he, it was clunky for a while, but it looks okay now. It's sad in a way because, I was very high on him, and it looks like he's become a casualty of just the depth and the bodies that have come in. So when he first showed up to Lehigh Valley, I think he showed up with Forster. Didn't they kind of show up together?
They did. It was during that.
They both had a really good. Yeah, they had a really good run together, and and I was like, yeah, see, totally, he's good. But we can't get fixated on stats. I know his stats aren't looking all that great. LePerrier seems to like him. He's playing him, not all that much. It's a situation where you got to look at it from a Lehigh Valley standpoint and not a Flyers standpoint. Okay, if he's going to be, and I think he's got skill. I really like him. He was Shane Wright's line mate. Like he was a top line guy in the OHL, if I recall correctly. So yeah. So I'm not. Listen, it like I said, like this is part of the business. You're going to get guys that get outperformed. They put up better numbers, whatever. But I'm not going to say he's like like a Matt Strome, where he's going to be bouncing back from the East. I think he's going to stick with Lehigh Valley. But the matter, it's contractually, I don't know how much longer he's got left, but it's just going to be a numbers game with him. That, does he do enough? Is there enough intangibles? What's he like off the ice? His work ethic off the ice. And I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying like these are probably things that the Flyers staff are going to have to talk about. Because I didn't the Flyers like restructure their player dev staff, and they're like,
yes,
we're going to get more hands-on, and we're going to like whatever they said. Who's the guys that Armstrong is in charge now?
Yeah, Riley Armstrong. They brought in like Patrick Sharp and John LeClaire. So
John LeClaire, John LeClaire. Yeah, we all love John LeClaire. Should be in the Hall of Fame, by the way. But the jury is still out on him on Wisdom. But I think he'd be good for like Lehigh Valley if they do have a push and you have some of these younger guys. You could consider him in a way like one of the elder statesmen, I guess, on Lehigh Valley from the forward ranks because they're going to start getting even younger now. So maybe he's good like that, but I don't know. You can't rank him in the top 10 or 15 of their prospects anymore. It's just what happened. But I still like him, and again, I think he could. I think he could reinvent himself as a checker, as a guy. The hands is what always stood out with me with him. Like this guy, I love the way he handles the puck, but the points aren't coming.
Yeah, you would hope that he could at least find a role in the fourth line. He does do a good job at the physical game. He's got the agitation there,
the checking.
Yeah. So.
I mean, for him, it's disappointing, right? Like obviously 0 points in 17 games. It's kind of crazy because the first season he came over to the AHL during the COVID year, like he had 18 points in 27 games.
Yeah.
So he looked like pretty good, like he was going to be more of a scorer, but then it hasn't really come back for him, the scoring touch at the AHL level. But I think what it is, and you kind of pointed out, Steve, just the numbers game. Like think about all the quality wingers that the Flyers have in their system right now. So it pushes a guy like Wisdom down naturally. So unless he's going to pop and kind of rise above the other guys, it kind of makes sense that there's some other prospects that have kind of surpassed him at this point. It just is what it is.
That's why I thought maybe a trade would be in his, because I could see another team wanting to take a chance on him.
Yeah, and you'd be doing him a favor, like
right,
that happens in the business. Like, hey, you blocked, we're going to move you. We're not trading you because we don't like you. We're trading you because we want you to succeed someplace else, and just don't do it against us.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, and he probably will. That type of thing. All right, that's it for the players. Let's go into we got 3 goalies here to go through. And I think you have plenty to say on all 3 of them. Let's go for the ace of the 3, Alexei Kolosov, who is already signed by the Flyers, already playing against men. I think we're all really high on him, and I expect him to be the starter for the Phantoms next year. Yeah. What can you tell us about Kolosov? That's
the key. His contract finally runs out with Minsk, so he'll be eligible to. He signed his ELC.
He signed and loaned. For this year, we loaned.
So I think he's got it's a 2-year, right? It's a 2-year. Yeah. It'll be a 2-year ELC.
Yep.
Listen, Minsk is on a good team, and he keeps them in games. He had a great game the other night or the other day against Vladivostok or some. Hey, he had a good game, but So here's the thing. I did look at his numbers. I watched him play a couple of times, but I did look at his numbers. Statistically, it might look good from like a North American standpoint, but I think he's got like one of the lowest save percentages in the KHL. Not the end of the world because it's not a good team, and he's basically one of their team MVPs. He's been their number one for years. He's played in big games for Belarus on the I think he's Belarusian.
Yep.
On the international level. So he's not putting up crazy numbers, but Minsk is in a playoff spot, and a lot of it has to do with him. So, just another, he was a pretty high round pick, a third round pick a couple of years ago. I think that based on what we're seeing right now with Urson and Hart and what we're also seeing in Lehigh Valley, you want to see Lehigh Valley have like someone step in. We thought Fedotov was going to be that guy. I can't forget about him, I guess. But but considering his age, his experience against men, his experience, high pressure. Listen, Minsk is a big major city. Okay, it's not like he's playing in some podunk town. He's playing in a big city, and so that I think is going to help him when he comes over. But I think he's going to push. He's going to push some of those goalies down in Lehigh Valley and make some of them either head to the ECHL or the Flyers won't offer him contracts because this guy's going to probably show up ready to go.
Yeah, I think there's a good chance the Flyers buy out Pettersson and allow Kolosov to come in here and play majority of games, and maybe Sandstrom stays. Who knows?
He would be the starter for sure.
I think so too.
Valley. Yeah.
Anything to add there, Vasili, beyond that?
Just with him, the athleticism. I've just seen just some saves that he makes. He just looks like a very athletic goalie. And I mean, from what he's doing as a 21-year-old in that KHL, obviously it's something you can't take lightly. But for the Flyers to sign him, it's kind of unheard of, right? To sign a guy like that, and then you're loaning him back to the KHL. So obviously, they hold him in very high regard. So I would expect. He's gonna, like you said, you would likely be the starter for the Phantoms next season here. Yeah,
totally. All right, let's go to the younger guys. Yegor Zavragin, I'm pretty sure I said that right this time. Another guy having an exceptional season in the VHL and the MHL. So what can you tell us about Zavragin?
Yeah. Well, I like I said, I told you guys, might even talked about him when we did our preseason show last year, that this guy is held in he still is probably held in very high regard by the Russian Federation, right? Tretiak, all those guys, they all love this kid. And if we had Russia involved in tournaments, he would be like an Askarov. He'd be their number one. There wouldn't be any debate. He'd be backstopping them in all the U18 and Holinka games.
Interesting.
And so I put him in my first round in my preseason last year. And so when the Flyers took him in the third round, I'm like, all right, good. All right. I'm not the only guy that is high. Now he played for a team of Monty Yugra, the Yugra organization, and they're competitive in the MHL. They're more offensive minded, but this guy easily has been one of the best MHL goalies the last couple of seasons. He played playoff games. So fast forward to this year, and he's playing in the VHL, the adult age VHL. Now they have a goalie. They have a starting goalie there. This guy's 40 years old, and he's their number one. But Zavragin joined them, and they only give him the starts against the shit teams. But he's undefeated. He's 6-0-0.
Yeah.
Hold on.
No, that's right.
6-0-0 with a 960 5 save percentage.
Crazy numbers, literally.
Yeah, 964
0.99 goals against average. So listen, the teams, every team he has beaten this year stinks. But he's also a 19-year-old, 18-year-old kid playing in the VHL, which is an adult age league. So he's living up to that reputation. And he would probably have been Russia's goalie at the World Juniors. I don't know if Ivanov is the Columbus draft pick is eligible. I forgot his year group. He might be in 03, so he wouldn't be eligible. But I think Zavragin would have been the goalie. Yeah. He's phenomenal. He's having a phenomenal year.
Yeah, it seems like the Flyers just keep hitting on these goalies of late, and it's a big change from the past. Anything to add, Vasili?
No, not much. Just for Zavragin, I mean, to be doing that in an adult age league after coming from the junior leagues in Russia is impressive. And then also just the fact that he's not going to be able to play in these tournaments is kind of unfortunate because you do lose some of that. I mean, with so many eyes on the World Junior Championship, it's unfortunate for a lot of the Russian prospects, to be honest, not just him. But
yeah. I think to your point earlier, Steve, about the Flyers ranking of their system, without the exposure of some of these Russian players, I don't think a lot of the league is going to be aware of how good the Flyers prospect pool is.
The league is aware of it. I don't think the media is aware.
The media, yeah, that's what I mean. The league media.
Yeah.
Obviously scouts know, but the Flyers are just
they know
one goalie after the next here. So let's go into the last goalie, and that's Carson Bjarnason, WHL guy, Brandon Wheat Kings, a guy that we're all high on who already has his ECHL or ECHL entry level contract. Wow. So yeah, I think we're all high on him, even though his numbers aren't beautiful. We've seen a little bit of what he can do. And obviously, only being 18 years old is just the beginning for him. So, what can you tell us about Bjarnason?
Just to add, Steve, before you go into it, just to add to the question, like, are you surprised that he did not get invited, Bjarnason, to Canada's selection camp there?
In a way, yes, but remember that he had some issues at the the U18 Worlds. He had some issues there. There was one tournament where I might be mistaken, but I felt like he. Was he on Canada's U18 team? I forget.
He was, I believe, yeah.
Yeah, so I think they had some issues with his play there. That might have hurt him.
Yeah, he was.
But the thing with Bjarnason is, so to answer your question, goaltending on the Canadian side this year is their weak point, right? Phenomenal forwards, phenomenal defensemen. The goaltending, they have DiVincentis, I think they invited. And then Ratzlaff, who I love Ratzlaff, the kid from the Seattle. But if there was a choice between Ratzlaff and Bjarnason, I ranked Ratzlaff ahead of Bjarnason, and Bjarnason I think got drafted ahead of Ratzlaff. So they chose Ratzlaff. I agree with that. The issue with I guess I'll just segue right into my analysis on him. He still gets beat from distance. And the one thing, Brandon is not like this powerhouse team. However, he's stolen games to them. He's definitely got number one upside still. He's a pup. So you can't just but what he did last year versus what he's doing this year, you're seeing a little bit of the same thing, like inconsistency. We always look at expected goals and shot quality and such. But maybe I'm old school when I say that you need your goalie to steal you a game more often than, like, if you're an average team and you have a high, you need your goalies to steal more games than not. Like you could have one clunker, but you got to steal two. And that's just like some, I just made that up. But it kind of like how I feel. Like you can't have two clunkers and then two good games and then clunker and then one good game. Like, so he has not had that run for a while. Remember, the end of his season last year was brutal.
Yeah, it wasn't brutal.
Good. He gave up a lot of goals. His glove was getting abused. And so I'm like, all right, well, you're older now. You drafted. You were at the dev camp. You got all the Flyer goalie gurus there. Clearly, the Flyer goalie gurus are doing okay because you look at how other prospects are doing. And then Urson's development, Hart's development. But we got to be more patient with him. Do I think they overshot the pick a little bit by drafting where they did? Yes. But that's just my personal opinion, being a draft analyst. However, you can't give up on him, and he's got plenty of time to turn it around. But, I think teams, if there's a book on him, distance, glove side, and, so is it depth in the net? Is it playing his angle? Is it quickness of reads? Like I'm not like really a goalie expert,
I will say, I think the Flyers are obviously confident that they can fix whatever's wrong with his game because they already gave him a contract. So that would tell me that they already feel confident enough in what they've seen and they had him here in-house already, and then they gave him the contract. So I think they probably look at his game and go, oh, well, he's got all of this. We just need to make some adjustments in his game, really.
I'll close with this, okay? Carter Hart was a second-round pick All right. So Carter Hart's situation was he was the second round pick, but he was the first goalie taken, if I recall correctly.
Yep.
Yes, he was.
When he was on Everett, he was unstoppable. He was like legit, like every game, it was 1 goal shutout, 2 goals shutout. And so he had that pedigree, and Bjarnason has never really done that yet. So that's my only concern with him, is that when are we going to see him take over? And when he takes over, it's too short. It's like 3-4 games, not over the course of 8 out of 10 games, 10 out of 15 games, etc. So just consistency.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, then let's end on. Oh, I'm sorry, Vasili. You want to add anything to that?
Oh no, just for Bjarnason, I mean, I would kind of parrot what Steve said, right? Like, just for any young goalie, it's a consistency thing. How often can you kind of put together like a full 60-minute game that a team is kind of looking for in terms of like solidifying, right? Like, as a goalie, you don't want to be giving a number one opportunity to somebody that's not going to be able to give you solid saves or kind of help you. I mean, at least for like in terms of like settling a game down. Like if a team's giving up a lot of chances. So I think for Bjarnason, that's what they're hoping, right? He can be a kind of guy that settles things down, obviously down the line, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Time will tell. His goalies are always a long journey for the most part, except for Carter Hart. All right, let's end on this. Let's give our listeners some insight. Again, keep it pretty high level, but just, Flyers have 2 first-round picks this year. Let's say they even finish middle of the road. And then they get the Florida pick, which will probably be, mid-20s or maybe low 20s, but it'll probably be mid-20s pick, which will give the Flyers 2 kind of, middle-of-the-road pick and then a later pick in the first round. They need a centerman, but they need defensemen, I would say, even more. I imagine they'll probably go defense first in this draft, but what can you tell us that they should look out for? Maybe a few players.
Well, listen, this draft, tough act to follow because 2023 was, it's expected to be historic, and we are seeing why with Fantilli and Carlson, what they're all doing. It's phenomenal.
Crazy, yeah.
So Celebrini has separated himself, undisputed number 1 choice right now. If anybody catches up with him, it's not going to be Cole Yzerman unless he goes on some crazy, unheard of tear. And that says a lot because he's averaging over a point a game or goal a game. I'm sorry. He's going to break Cole Caulfield's record. Talking about Yzerman, that is. But it's a defense heavy draft, insane, like 2012 type stuff where you're going to see like 15 defensemen, 12 to 15 defensemen taken in round 1. The thing is, though, is that the best players from this draft are still forwards, right? And, you look at Ivan Demidov, who's a wing. You look at some of the centers, Berkeley Catton. You're looking at the Sasha Boyver. You got the guy, Greentree, but he's not a center. He's a wing. Konsta Helenius, the Finnish kid, is fantastic. So I think when teams are going to look at this draft, a team like the Flyers specifically, let's just say, hypothetically speaking, the Flyers don't make the playoffs, but they have a good season record-wise, so they're more like picking 11 or 10 or 12. They can still draft a high-caliber forward who would be a top 10 pick in most other, let's say, non-2023 draft years. The thing is, though, I'm wondering, based on what happened last year, right? You had 3 teams, in my opinion, go way off the board to take defensemen high up, right? Verlander at 10 to Vancouver, Ryan Baca to Montreal at 5, and then at whatever it was 6. Was it 6 where the defenseman to Arizona, the Russian kid?
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
So now they're seeing, we'll look at what Zach Benson's doing. Look what Nate Danielson was phenomenal for Detroit during training camp. That maybe just go back to like what works, right? You could find a Norris caliber defenseman around 2, but you're not going to find a lot of crazy elite award-winning forwards up beyond, let's say, the top 15. So my advice for the Flyers is, yes, you could find an elite defenseman, but you're going to find him also later in the first round. So I'd use that first pick. If it's a top 12 pick, use it on a forward. definitely not a wing. But then again, you never know. Maybe they want a left wing, like an elite, like Michkov type. Maybe because Demidov can play left wing. So it's a weird situation. I'm still not. I don't know what I'm not really. I know for a fact if I'm a Flyers fan, I don't want another wing. But there are a lot of wings who are going to be available. Who you like? Cole Eiserman and Demidov are potential franchise 40-goal scoring guys, right? Yeah. So if your scouts have a staunch BPA, like literally the best player available, doesn't matter by position, they stick with it, then they might go that route. But really, the defensemen are phenomenal in this draft class. I mean, there are guys like I mentioned Dickinson. I mentioned there's guys like Muse and Jiricek. Zayt Parekh set the OHL defense scoring record for a teenager last year. The guy, Salayev is really the big guy. Salayev might be first overall. He's that good.
That's what I was going to ask you, Steve. Like Salayev, what's your thoughts on him? Like I know he's 6'7".
Phenomenal.
Okay,
man. He better than Provorov was in his draft year. To try to give you guys an idea, this guy is. I mean, there are times where he looks better than Victor Hedman in his draft year. I mean, this guy is a man child. To do what he's doing, he's playing in the KHL as a 18-year-old, 17-year-old. It's going to have hiccups, but I love him, and I'm going to push him all the way up to 3. I'm going to bump down Eiserman after his, he's kind of lackluster U18 tournament, and he's just scoring goals, and that's about it. Always beaver tapping, give me the puck. I don't like that shit. I like the kid. I want him to do well, but from a draft standpoint, I need to see a little bit more than what he's given. Anyway, nonetheless, to wrap things up, as far as the 2020 draft goes, we have a long way to go. All right, we've only had 2 major tournaments, which is the Hlinka and the U18 Five Nations. We haven't had the World Juniors is going to have not as many 2005s or late 05s, 06s. Like we've seen like last year. Remember last year we had a whole bunch of draft prospects playing the World Juniors. I don't even want to see that this year. There's no guarantee that Celebrini makes the Canadian team, although I think he does. So, but the big ones are going to be the CHL Top Prospects game, the UHL Prospects game, the second half tournaments. But as of right now, you're looking at a forward heavy top 10, and the rest of round 1 will be just defensemen everywhere, which goes back to what we talked about with Montreal's decision to pass and Arizona and them to pass. Like those 3 defensemen, they're good. I don't think their upside is as high as like at least 5 or 6 defensemen in this draft.
Well, that's good to know because we're going to need defensemen. So the fact that there's some promising stuff there, I think we need to add somebody on to, not just have Oliver Bonk have so much pressure on him to be that guy for us because we'll need more than just that to kind of reload here.
Yeah, and the good thing too is that there's a nice balance between left and right shot. So like it's not like you have like 3 right shots and then like but all left. No, it's a nice balance, right? So another guy to keep an eye on though, I will say this. If you want to wrap it up on the draft, Cole Hudson, Lane's brother, just as good. Maybe even better at this stage. Maybe even better. Right? This kid is phenomenal. He's basically his brother. Like the way you see Lane play now for BU is how Cole is playing for the NTDP. So, and he hits. He's like a mix of like a Sean Behrens and a Sean Behrens, if you don't know the Colorado pick who played for the NTDP, and Lane Hudson. So, and he wasn't even rated pretty high by Central Scouting. I had him as a first-round pick. This is the draft. This is the year to draft a defenseman. Bottom line.
Perfect timing. And the Flyers could still move up. I'm sorry. Go ahead, please. Vasili.
No, I was just going to say, I think for where the Flyers are at in terms of like the defense prospects versus the forward, right? They're probably going to lean more towards defense. But I thought that was really interesting, Steve, just about Cole Hudson, because I think he's about the same size almost as his brother, like 5'9". So I wonder just like if teams will see the name, kind of see the same type of style of play, and they'll be kind of trigger happy maybe to go and draft him earlier than maybe he would be ranked. But that'll be one to keep an eye on for sure.
Well, I'm glad you brought up size because I wrote a pretty big article on my Substack about the Central Scouting rankings or the watch list, how we've seen a massive shift in size now. Remember how like small players, they're getting bigger now. The data proves it, that far less 5'8" and 5'9" and way more 6'1" and 6'2". So maybe this is a byproduct of the Stanley Cup playoffs last year when you heard all the GMs talk at the draft. They're like, well, if you look at how Florida played, they played a heavy game. Great. Now they're all going to start drafting the big goon defensemen again. But these defensemen here, you really don't have like the Eric Goodbranson or the Dylan McElrath, where it's like stay-at-home type, dominant guy, number 2, like a Brooks Orpik. No, these guys are mostly, almost entirely two-way types, puck rushers, gunslingers, power play.
Mobile, yeah.
That's what we really need. We need a guy who can play a two-way game, but maybe another Cam York type, but a guy who can hopefully have a big shot from the point, somebody who can help drive a top power play unit, especially when Michkov and Gauthier are here.
And also, too, like you look at the modern day NHL defenseman, I think that's what the trend is kind of going towards, right? That mobile two-way puck moving type D-man versus, the big like Eric Branson or a Brooks Orpik type that's more stay at home. They're kind of leaning towards, okay, we need a defenseman that can move the puck efficiently.
Yeah, those guys are necessary, but you could get them in free agency.
Yeah, exactly. Get them later in the draft.
Like, don't draft them friggin' top 10 because you always hear this. Oh, the next Scott Stevens. No, there's not gonna be the next Scott Stevens.
Yeah.
So don't get me started.
So I think the perception is that size absolutely will always matter. It's a complete physical sport, but it's about roles. And I always talk about it's about roles in the league, right? And you have those physical guys, but you don't need to draft them high, right?
No,
you can bring them in later. You can find them in the second round, in the third, in the fourth round, right? Or you can find them through free agency because they're not going to be big point producers. They're going to be a complement to the guy who's a little bit smaller, who can move the puck. I think a lot of that works the best with, especially not a top pairing. If you're in your second pairing, your third pairing, you can definitely balance out, have one puck mover, one stay-at-home guy, like we see with Sean Walker and Nick Seeler, which is working really well with us. Here, you need the complementary roles.
Look at how many GMs and head coaches are ex-defensemen. You know what I mean? I think if you look at a guy like Steve Yzerman, friggin' Hall of Fame elite player, right? So he knows the importance of the offensive side of things, but he also remembers when his coaches told him, Steve, you got to play frickin' defense. You're too one-dimensional, and he changed that up. So I think that you got a lot of old Lou Lamoriello, Glenn Sather, like these guys are still, they're either GMs they're either GMs or they're advisors, or they're all going to say, well, we need to be big to win in the playoffs. And that's fine, but you want that big to be like a Keandre Miller or like a Sanheim where they could skate with the puck.
Still move the puck, exactly.
Actually, now that you mention it, I did want to ask you, what do you think about Travis Sanheim's transformation as a player? Because
everything is great. Everything is great except the turnovers. He's still turning the puck over. Like he has these turnovers. You're like, dude, but like he was like, so like last night against the Penguins.
Yeah,
the first goal against, totally his fault. They blamed Farabee. I don't blame. It's not Farabee's fault. Sanheim should have understood the situation.
Super it was late deep in the zone.
Yeah, late in the first period. You don't do it. Don't do it. Stay back. But then he made up for it multiple times by rushing the puck, taking the puck in deep, and of course the overtime winner. He had a hand in that as well.
Yeah,
I think he had a hand in the overtime winner.
Yeah,
right?
he did. It was his play.
The set play off the face-off.
Yeah,
which was
really nice play to rim the puck
by
around.
The way.
Yeah, that was gorgeous to watch, and it was nice to be on the winning end. And
you saw them talk about it too. You saw the flyer. It was Konechny, Couturier. They huddled, and it worked freaking perfectly. But to answer your question, listen, he's leading the league in time on ice.
Yeah.
He's not necessarily like he's getting power play time, and that's the other thing. He's not quarterbacking the power play. When I watched it the last couple times, it was York.
Yeah.
So
he's been okay on the power plays. He had a big shot, but he's not the best power play guy.
He's definitely earning his money. That's that, and then some. But I want to say this about the Flyers when I've been watching them, and they need that number one on ice general who does everything. We thought Provorov. There was a point where Provorov was that guy, I really they need like they would be such a game changer for the team on the ice, their performance, to have like a Hedman or a McCarr or a Fox or a Quinn Hughes. There's a lot, like every team has one except almost every team has one except the Flyers. And I think that although Jones was kind of like a rugged like winger, and Briere, we all know he was a finesse guy. I think they both see that. Yeah.
Well, no, I was gonna say, well, the one thing I've been considering, right, as you load up on assets, things will change, players will come available either through free agency if you can find a guy like New Jersey found with Hamilton. But maybe there's an opportunity for a trade there, right? Because I think that's really more than a centerman, because Coots can play against anybody in the league. They really need that number one defenseman, or at least a top pairing defenseman guy who can play and quarterback the power play and play against the best players.
Yeah, I think that's the next thing they target for sure, Yariv.
Yeah.
Like Keith Jones kind of mentioned in the offseason that their goal is to kind of rebuild this defense from the ground up. So I wouldn't be surprised with all the assets they have, and just with a lot of like depth on the wing, if they try to parlay some of that into potentially defense. Yeah.
Hanifin, I'm not saying he would be a number one franchise type. It might be a slight upgrade over, let's say, Sanheim. But when you have look how many defensemen they've used this year, and they're actually still, like I said, they're in the playoff mix. But if I could just trust me, 40 years of watching freaking hockey, almost 40 years watching hockey, that Carolina is the only team who won a Stanley Cup I went through all of it. Carolina is the only team that won a Stanley Cup without like a real legit Norris caliber defenseman. They had like Glenn Wesley and Brett Hedican and
Hainsey.
You have to make up with depth.
Yeah, I think it was Walmark. I forgot the other guy's name. But yeah, you need a legit number one elite defenseman. And listen, the draft, you could kill two birds with one stone. Like you said, Vasili, you got all these assets. They're not all going to become 40-goal scorers. You can afford that kind of trade. Might piss off the tank crew, but again, it'll add an element.
It makes sense.
Of course, teams aren't going to trade a 25-year-old, near point a game defenseman, right? You're going to have to go out.
Trade an 28-year-old, right? That's kind of what I was thinking, is if you wait a year or two, right, until you're like a pretty good team that's in the playoffs, and then you go for that guy, right?
I think it just has to be a situation that makes sense and presents itself, right? Like, let's say there's a scenario where one of these top level type defensemen find themselves on the way outs on a team because they're not having the success they're looking for. I mean, who knows, right? What's going to happen? But I think that'll be what the Flyers are keyed into, right? Like, who becomes available? That's a top type of guy. Like Hanifin, to your point, makes sense. Steve, I mean, he would be the top echelon guy, but he's a guy that Calgary's going to look to move from pretty much.
Yeah.
They'll need to do it. All right, Steve, anything you want to let people know about draft coverage wise or anything at all?
No,
you're good.
That's why I put my Twitter account on private. I'm like, you know what? I don't want to. I'm good. If you want to find me, Substack is where you find me. But I'm not going to promote myself anymore. I don't know if you guys remember, like I wanted to kind of close it all up and keep my information to like a certain group of people. I just, all the clickbaity stuff was bothering me. And so I appreciate the fans. I appreciate the fans' feedback and everything, but my Substack is the only place you're really going to find me. If you try to follow me on Twitter, I'm not gonna accept it. So I'm done with Twitter, and
I don't blame you.
The way to go.
I don't blame you at all.
It's a cesspool on Twitter, so I hear you.
Yeah, I made a tweet. I thought I made a really valid point about the Devils, and like some Devils fan was like, "You got nothing left to say important, do you?" I'm like, "Oh God!" Like, and people like just ignore it. I can't ignore
That's
that.
what I do.
Yeah.
So, but anyway,
the space right now, right? Social media is like, we live in an era where nobody can be wrong. Everybody's got to be right. Nobody can have a different opinion, right? You disagree with somebody, and it's like you're mortal enemies. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But
but anyway, I definitely, you guys have one of the best podcasts out there, and I
thank you so much.
Absolutely enjoy being on here, and like every time that we convene, I feel like all your listeners and all your subscribers are going to get smarter. And so it's not just when I'm on, it's like when you guys do any podcast. So it's good stuff. And, I'll close it on this to the tank crew. I'll call them the tank crew. Okay. Just enjoy it. All right. Just enjoy it. All right. You're going to get a good player. You're going to get a franchise defenseman caliber in this draft. They have, like you said, 2 first-round picks. Trust your GM and your team president. Trust the coach. I get why you're upset, but I'll be upset when they lose. Don't be upset when they win.
Yeah, I like that. And really appreciate the kind words. And we feel the same way about you. You're still the highest played episodes in general that we have. And
all right.
Our last episode we did absolutely crushed it for us. So our audience definitely loves you as well. We told people you're coming on, and people even commented they were excited.
We love having you on, Steve,
just
to talk hockey, man. It's so much fun, so we appreciate it.
Likewise. As always.
Awesome. Vasili, anything you want to leave our audience with?
Just articles on flyersnittygritty.com coming out, just, on the Flyers in general. So keep an eye out, everybody. But we appreciate everybody just tuning in and listening to us, and continued support. It means a lot to all of us here.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. Thank you again, everybody, for listening. Please remember to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell for notifications, follow us on iTunes and Spotify, give us a rating on iTunes. All that stuff is a tremendous help. We really appreciate all of the listening. And again, shout out to Jim Steaks on 4th and South. Go get yourself a cheesesteak from them on DoorDash. We love you guys. And remember, always stay gritty.